Jack, there it is. There we go. For some reason, my mic wasn't on. Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? It's your boy, the Infinite Dragon here, and welcome to Witch on the Holy Night. I will, for some reason, my brain keeps wanting to call this game Strike Witch, or Strike the Witch, rather, which is an anime that I've never seen in my fucking life. I think it's an anime. Hold on, let me look at it real quick. Strike Witch. Strike Witch revolves around teenage moe anthropomorphic girls who use machines attached to their legs to do aerial combat. I've never seen this in my life. I just know the name, I guess. But like they're like they're like furry women, but they're also like machine ladies. I keep wanting to call the game Strike Witches for some reason. I don't know why. That feels full. I'm not sure that's a good thing. I don't know what that means. Do you mean like you have a lot of stuff going on? But yeah, so I don't actually know too much about Witch on the Holy Night, except that it's technically a prequel to Tsukihime. I know because I studied the multi-blood lore a long time ago, and I played Tsukihime on my off time. Like 5 years ago, I do know the lore of Tsukihime, and that game is very good. And we played Fate like last year, so same company. I'm expecting very good things. I expect me to go, what the fuck is happening? And if I do, good game. All right, enough yapping. Let's get into it. This is one of those games that kind of starts immediately. So I'm gonna have you guys help me out with the audio check. Okay. Well, first things first. There's no audio, so let me fix that. Oh. What the hell? I swear I'm a professional, guys. What is going on right now? There it is. No, we don't care. There we go. Jesus Christ. All right. Maybe go to this. Muted. It says it's not muted. Use winter day. Hold on. Nope. Okay. There's just no sound here. That's all there is. All right. It's fine. There was just no sound for some reason. Okay. It was a winter's day 8 years ago. The solemn morning when she understood the value of life for the very first time. Her home was nestled on the side of a mountain. Around it was nothing but inhospitable wilderness. She had no neighbors or childhood friends to speak of. Things like traveling to school or playing outside were more trouble than they ought to be. Indeed, with its pure water and bright stars, it was a place rich with memories both frustrating and halcyon? Never seen that word in my life, halcyon. That was only during summer though. Winters in those mountains were extremely frigid, each morning more severe than the last. Her father would drive her to the train station, after waiting 10 minutes for the engine to warm up and the iced over windows to clear. How's volume, chat? Her father would savor his morning coffee, leaving her to venture outside and rev the engine. Out the front door she would go, traversing the garden with icy breath until she reached that old sedan. Sounds good, not too loud, voices not too loud. As always, she inserted the key, then started the ignition. The engine rumbled to life. Just as she proudly finished that humble task she'd done so many times before. That was kind of loud. A shrill scream pierced the air. She knew, even though it wasn't human, that the feeble sound was a cry of agony. A few moments passed. Her father came out and opened the hood of the car. Creaking fan belts. A monstrous-looking engine. And something that didn't belong. There was a cat, a mother by the looks of it, and 2 kittens. The 3 cats had been huddling for warmth in the engine's compartment. The mother was missing its head. Jesus Christ! One of the kittens had been mangled beyond recognition by the engine belts and surely died instantly. The other kitten, its face half covered in blood, panted faintly. It desperately clung to its mother, or rather the chunk of meat that had been its mother, with the last bit of life it could muster. The father lamented their plight. The previous night had been especially cold. After he returned home yesterday, the cats must have snuck under the hood, drawn by the warmth of the engine. That's... Hey look, eugenics! That's fucked up. I didn't know we were playing eugenics. We actually might play eugenics after 3 hours. They had slept next to the engine and awoken to a storm of spinning belts. Cars in the 80s were not sealed particularly well, so this is not unheard of. Her father's voice seemed distant. She could only make out a small tuft of the kitten's gray fur. The rest of it was caked in blood of its mother and brother. Joke aside, sound quality isn't too bad. It's not as loud as you, so that's a good thing, but it's still hearable. Okay. Well, if it gets too loud, let me know. I can see its skull. The fragile life of a speckled kitten. Trembling and possibly blunt, it continued to nuzzle against its dead mother's chest. She took the kitten into her arms and ran deep into the mountains to her grandfather's house. Was it because she was overcome with regret? Or was it the shock of grief? Years later, she still wasn't sure. Fighting back the welling tears, she burst into her grandfather's workshop. Her grandfather was a magician who could do anything. She had never seen magic. She knew that magic was a fantasy straight out of fairy tales, but so was her grandfather. She had to find him. He was the only one who could help. The cave-dwelling magician said indifferently. This kid needs our help, she pleaded. Whether it was a simple task, I think I could turn her voice acting on, but I'll wait to do that because I don't know where anything is. It's one of those anti-spoiler games where if you look at all the character settings, everything's blocked out. Whether it was a simple task or Herculean labor, her grandfather would not say. He simply granted the girl's childish wish like a machine. Good base. Oh no, the girl said. Before she knew it, however, she was holding a tiny corpse in her hands. Its fur was cold. The warmth of life had left its body, and the tears she had fought so hard to hold back poured from her eyes. Regret spread through her chest like an endless gray sky. Aw. Her mind struggled to come to grips with what had just occurred. The last 10 minutes were a total blank. Who she met, what she had known, it was all as if it never happened. It was a canon event. The only thing she was sure of was that life, once extinguished, can never return. Eh? That day. It was her mistake that gave birth to me. Indeed. Whatever occurred that day, it was a day of nostalgia and longing. It was Miguel who put the cats in the engine. This is the fairy tale of 8 years ago. The day they first met, that no magic can ever bring back. Arrogant, wow. Greedy, and able to destroy. I must be a wolf. I don't have regrets. There's no looking back. If my pride has left you behind, my sincere condolences. But at any rate, I suppose it's my fate to die at the hands of the Little Red Riding Hood. Huh? It was a quiet morning. From her bed, she could see the sky was an ashen watercolor gray. The thermometer displayed 43 degrees Fahrenheit, rather unforgiving temperature for November. Her stomach woke her up with a growl, pathetically reminding her that she had completely missed breakfast. But lazy mornings like today were, for her, a blessing. Man, there's nothing better than like sleeping in on a Sunday, especially when it's raining. It was already well past 8 in the morning. On an ordinary weekday, tardiness would be unavoidable, but today classes were canceled in commemoration for the school's anniversary. So Rakapow, what do you know about Tsukihime and or Melty Blood? And hello, Rakapow. Gratefully, she had every intention of taking it easy for the first time in ages. Outside the window was a gloomy gray, and it reminded her more of the evening than morning. Literally nothing? Awesome. So we're technically starting with the prequel. If there are any gaps to fill in, I can fill them in because I've played Tsukihime. I've heard of Melty Blood from somewhere. Melty Blood is a fighting game. Tsukihime is the visual novel and therefore the story of Melty Blood. But it was one of those weird things that happened in like the 90s and 2000s where like, no one's going to play this visual novel. Let's put a bunch of sex in it and let's give it a fighting game. Isn't that where Necro comes from? Yes, that's also one of our emotes. It wasn't a pleasant morning by any stretch of the imagination. But having been up all night until just 3 hours ago, she couldn't care less about the weather outside. All she cared about was more sleep. As long as she could spend her morning in bed, what was happening outside was of no concern to her. So that's not a fake character. No, but you would not be wrong for mistaking it for a fake character because Fate, Stay Night, and Tsukihime are the same company and the same writer. So there's going to be similarities. For example, CL, if you Google the character CL, spelled C-I-E-L, I'm sure you'll notice that she looks exactly like Hide. It's because they're both people of the cloth, and they also use the black keys to fight, which is those weird like sword things that they use. She shut the curtains, then closed her eyes and tried to let sleep reclaim her. Blissful slumber found her soon enough. Her consciousness faded. However, her simple request would be mercilessly refused. I looked at the name and I got a math equation next to the anime character. Nice. You just pieced some questions together for me that I didn't want to look up. Well, you're welcome then. At least I didn't want to do research for it. Yeah. If you guys want to know more about Melty Blood, I did do a stream a long time ago called I Studied the Melty Blood Lord. I should put it in the Discord at some point, but you should put it and check this out. If you guys want to know more about it, then you can have that stream. I'm sure we'll eventually play Tsukihime though, because I mean we're already playing this. And this is the prequel, right? So a faint but shrill sound lingered in her ears. It was the unmistakable ring of a telephone. Much to her chagrin, her eyes hopped open out of habit. The telephone was situated in the foyer on the first floor. Answering it meant walking down a 30-foot corridor and going down a flight of stairs. In her sleep-deprived state, the distance seemed somewhere between incredibly far and astronomically far. The phone's incessant ringing continued. She knew the caller would eventually give up if she ignored it, but she chose to fight the urge. She thought her housemate would get it, but she soon had to abandon all hope. The realization struck that her housemate did not have the day off from school and was likely in class at present at her prestigious little hilltop academy. The caller proved incredibly persistent. That persistence made the volume of the ringing seem even louder. That felt a little loud, hold on. Aoko. Can I change all of the voices? Unless the music volume, voice volume, there we go. Change it. Let's stay there for right now. She was left with no choice but to get up, throw a top on, and leave the room. Was she not wearing a top? She rubbed her hands together to warm her numb fingers. The mansion's heating system was inadequate to say the least, which meant that winter was the very worst of the uninvited guests. Never more so Never more so on a dreary morning as this, when one didn't need to use the thermometer to know how cold it was. The mansion sat in the mountains and was surrounded by a dense forest. Winter always arrived here first before moving on to the nearby towns. Bro, I've never heard a phone ring this goddamn long. The robotic ring of the telephone reverberated throughout the long hallway. The mansion's furnishings had been so perfectly maintained that it made the place feel unlived. It seemed lonelier than it did splendid. Coupled with the dreary morning, it could have passed for a haunted house. ま、幽霊屋敷そのものだけど、だいたい2人で住むには広すぎるのよ、この家は。That means we're gonna get housemates, chat. Damn, bitch, I know you want to reach out to me about my car's extended warranty, but give me a fucking second. Bruh, like, I've never heard a phone ring this long. She counted more than 30 rings since it first began. The caller either had a lot of free time on their hands or had a good understanding of the house's circumstances. She had a strong hunch that it was the latter. The window above looked out into the gloomy sky. She hastened to catch the unrelenting ring in the act as soon as possible, though she had a feeling that her happy morning might come to a close the moment she caught it. It was here that a series of incidents began. Apologies for the lack of romance to this tale, for whether it be objectively true or merely supposition. It is always far gloomy and unassuming beginnings that extraordinary events are set in motion. She was shot through the phone. She died instantly. Alright, hit the like button because we just got copyright claimed. She died instantly. Alright, that was it. Did you guys like it? It was pretty short. Oh, I gotta say, so far the art is really good. How much is this? So, the game is about 30 hours, and I paid $30 for it. I think it's actually $40. It's on sale right now, which is why I was like, I'll play this. Also, the reason why we're playing this now as opposed to any other time is because the anime for this is coming out relatively soon. It just says this year, so I don't know when, but $1 per hour. Yeah, that's how I feel like I should quantify. There's an anime. There's going to be an anime. That's how I feel like I should quantify my time with games. How much enjoyment did I get out of this for my per dollar? So I think the main thing is that when in Tsukihime, anytime Aoko is mentioned, which is our main character in this game, her hair is as red as that umbrella, but her hair is like a regular brown color in this. So I'm curious to see what happens to her hair changes colors. It's $1 per hour, which is pretty generous considering Silksong is only $20. That's how I feel about Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is like 100 hours of game for a $15 game. Metroidvania is noted to be super generous most of the time because of the genre alone. Bro, I'm so excited for the new Castlevania game. My yo hit the keyboard and typed 81 and sent it. Damn, your yo just knows exactly what's going on. Now imagine your yo-yo hits 6-7. The rain had subsided somewhat by the time she reached the school gate. Okay, but what happened to the phone call? Did we ever hear about her car's extended warranty? Man, the day I got my first yo-yo was the day I lost my dad. Was it your dad's going away present? He said, I'm gonna get you another yo-yo and didn't come back. Sunlight seemed to be playing peekaboo behind the clouds in the distance. It looked like it might be cleared up by the early afternoon.
と言っても、私には関係のない話だけど。
The weather reflected her luck. On top of being forced out of the house on such an early hour, she had to suffer through a winter rain. Dude, winter rain is the worst. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. The sinking feeling she had only grew as she passed through the entrances and headed inside. Maybe if you learned how to walk the dog, you'd come back. She didn't encounter any other students along the way. Nor did she see anyone taking part in club activities either. The receptionist desk at the faculty room simply read, "Faculty closed." The school had given all of its students the day off, except those explicitly summoned, like her. A fact that irked her more and more as the minute passed. You know, I've been in this situation. I understand her. Suddenly, Silent Hill F. Maybe, actually. I don't actually know anything about Silent Hill F, but maybe. Both of you said the thing about Silent Hill. She opened the doors to the faculty room and headed towards the desk she had visited a number of times before. The man at the desk wore a plain shirt and suit that were nonetheless neatly pressed. Slim frame glasses adorned his face, giving off an amicable yet cunning air. The mild-mannered mild-mannered image, this mid-20s man. Bro, you're 20 and you over here smoking? Do better. This mild-mannered image, this mid-20s man presented Clash with the cigarette he smoked. He didn't appear to have noticed her yet. Also, why are you smoking inside the school building?
Yamashiro-sensei.
She closed the door with a bang. All I know is that it's a Japanese style of Silent Hill with Japanese yokai and monsters. That's cool. She just runs into the main character of Silent Hill. Have you seen my wife? She's dead. Showing no response to the sudden sound, Mr. Yamashiro lifted his head.
Yeah, ohayo, Aozaki-kun. Youken wa kiite iru kana?
Okay, so that's interesting. He said Aozaki-kun as opposed to Aozaki-chan. Kun is usually a suffix that, or is usually an honorific that they give to boys. So it's interesting that he said that.
はい。1時間前に自宅で、事前に何の相談もなく。
Having graduated from this high school himself, Mr. Yamashiro was not much older than the rest of the students. For that reason, the students preferred him over the other teachers. He always had something interesting to talk about and kept conversations casual. In fact, he seemed more like an older student than a teacher, but she unfortunately didn't share her fellow students' fondness for him. She was of the opinion that the teachers should come across as more austere. I think that's how you pronounce that. Yeah, I'm looking at the difference in play times for Hollow Knight and Silksong is funny. I put 44 hours into Hollow Knight and put 93 hours into Silksong. Granted, with Hollow Knight I knew what I was doing, but still. What about the first time you played Hollow Knight? Because I assume you didn't originally play it on PC. He looks like he has a dead wife. He does. Although he's like 25. Like an iron fist that could inspire both love and hate in equal measure. Not a buddy to joke and pal around with. It was the exact opposite of how she felt the teacher should be. It was only natural that her manner towards him would be forced and unfriendly. Not that she'd ever been wired to make friendly small talk.
今日もご機嫌斜めみたいだね、君。
それは先生の気のせいです。今日だけ特別。
The matter-of-fact answer perfectly matched her with the displeasure displayed on her face. Her bad mood from having to get up early and the tiredness from staying up late must have collectively made her look positively adversarial. Hello, life.
そうならいいんだけどね。彼にはそう辛く当たらないでくれよ。僕らじゃ正直どう扱っていいかわからないところもあるし。
先生、その件ですけど、私まだ詳しい話を聞かされていないのですが。
Cello. I like cellos. Chad, do you like Jello? As Mr. Yamashiro met her piercing eyes, he finally understood the reason behind her tone and slowly put out his cigarette. Why are you smoking inside the school?
電話じゃあなんて聞いたの？
転入生の紹介をするとだけです。理由も脈絡もない説明でした。
Only line with pineapple? Really? As a kid, I used to swallow a whole cup of plastic Jello and I wouldn't gulp. I do that with applesauce. One of Mr. Yamashiro's eyebrows stood up, impressed with the brevity of her answer. You could see that she was angry, not because she had been called to the school on her day off, but because she hadn't been told why she was here. I fucking hate Jello. It consistently makes me want to gag whenever I eat any. Tell me you're autistic without telling me you're autistic. Mr. Yamashiro chuckled sympathetically.
先生、これが笑い話ならそろそろ帰っていいでしょうか。
いや、ごめん謝るよ。冗談じゃなくて真面目な話なんだ。ちょっと君の手を借りたくてね。
本当に転入生の問題で。
Jello's one of my safe foods? Really? Chocolate is my safe food. It's my safe food, it's my stress food, it's my all food. I will always be able to eat chocolate.
訳ありというか難しいというか。彼、宗十郎くんと言うんだけど、ちょっといろいろとずれていてね。
Pizza, I also like
僕ら
pizza.
が案内してあげるより、同世代の君の方が適任だと思ったんだ。
I know it's bad, but you can't fuck it up. It's really hard to fuck up pizza, you are correct. I think the last time I ate Jello was my sophomore year of high school, so like 3 years ago. So, I probably should know who some of these characters are, but I only know who Aoko is currently. She threw him an unamused look. It was negligent of them to be pushing teacher duties on her, but she did wonder how exactly this transfer student was peculiar. Maybe he meant the student had bad behavior problems or was difficult somehow. But peculiar? She didn't have the slightest idea what that meant.
ずれてるなんてそう使わない表現だけど。
She had her doubts, but swept them aside for now. This wasn't the time to get distracted by more concerns. They discontinued the lime and pineapple Jello, so I don't know when I last ate it. They did?
Pizza time.
Wait, when did this happen? Pizza's the perfect food. You can do whatever the fuck you want to it. You can do that if you're American. If you're not American, that is not true. Unrelated, but apparently today marks the 15-year anniversary of the 3DS. And canceled service for it. The factory made you should celebrate by modding your 3DS. I don't even know, I just can't find it. Well, what you could do, Life, is that whatever flavor packet that they have for Jello, you could just replace it with like a different like a Kool-Aid flavor packet, and then you'll get the lemon lime flavor. It won't taste exactly the same, but it should taste similar enough. The fact remained that this conversation was all of the peculiar she could handle, and she needed more information. She was already beginning to fantasize about saying no and curling up in her warm bed at home. You don't feel the same?
質問があ
Yeah.
ります。
何？あ、学年は君と同じ2年生だよ。 性格は落ち着きがあって人の話をよく聞くタイプ。裏を返せば覇気がないとも取れるけど、それならそれで付き合いやすいだろ。
Because it was the cups of jello with the fruit in it. Yeah. Yeah. Deep throat a cup of jello. Listen, if you're not taking those little packages and then like slurping it out of there, I don't believe you're autistic.
青崎くんとはクラスは違うけ
Why
ど
use a spoon?
きっと仲良くな。
そういったことは本人から直接聞きますし、測ります。そうではなく、なぜ私なんでしょうか。
Though her tone was stern, it was clear that she was willing to cooperate. She had decided to put her feelings of dissatisfaction aside and focus on the task at hand. I just kind of tongued at it. Listen, that's fine. My point being is that I don't believe you're autistic if you use the spoon to eat that shit, alright? That's my point. Like, you should be flirting with your cup of stuff. That's what I'm saying. You should be flirting with your cup of jello, your pudding, your applesauce. You should be flirting with it. Otherwise, I don't believe you're autistic. Only spoon in public? Nah, fuck that. Let a nigga stare. I'm already funny looking, give him a reason to stare. That's what I'm saying. Paradoxically, this force of will was also the reason teachers put so much faith in her. To a point. At times, that strength shattered expectation, and on those occasions, they were left with no choice but to treat it like some natural disaster and weather it until it passed. That was how Mr. Yamashiro had come to deal with her over the past year.
もう一度だけ聞きます、山城先生。それで、なぜ私なんでしょうか。
Pressured by a question without a clear yes or no answer, he answered.
それはね、別に青崎くんが先生方に敬遠されているのと同じぐらい信頼されていて、学校のためなら教師も生徒も一緒くたに切って捨てる鉄の生徒会長だからじゃないよ。
You ain't autistic if you didn't make someone feel like a third wheel between you and your pudding cup.
それ以外にこんな呼びつけを受ける理由はないと思いますけど。
Her eyes did nothing to hide her disbelief as she glared at them. Glared at him. Strength far beyond that of an ordinary 17-year-old girl, coupled with the youthful beauty of one. That's a weird thing to say. Mr. Yamashiro let slip a genuine smile, embodying her miraculous balance of qualities.
いや、責務だけでいいなら僕がやってるさ。この人選に関しちゃ教師や生徒会長といった役職も関係ないよ。なんていうか、こんな頼みを損得抜きで聞いてくれるのは君だけだと思ってね。適任ですからと強く推薦したわけ。
In other words, he knew she wouldn't say no.
山城先生。
うわ、怖っ。もう睨まない睨まない。言ったろ、僕にはともかく彼には笑顔でって。
So what he actually said is, oh, scary. Vulpix is a good Pokemon.
とまあ、
I also really like the Alolan form.
すぐに移動しよう。もうずいぶん待たせてしまっているからね。それと雨の中ご苦労様。帰りはもちろん車で送るよ。
Mr. Yamashiro stood up gracefully. I'm good, thanks, she replied before turning and walking out of the faculty room. He had been waiting for about an hour. While he did, the rain shower lifted into a drizzle. His mind wandered as he listened to the sound of raindrops. The room was filled with neatly arranged rectangular tables. He was the only one there. Quite some time had passed since he had been brought to this room and asked to wait. Even the best behaved student might have grown dissatisfied or anxious with the situation by now, but the boy stuck to his spot like a scarecrow. He was chilled to the bone. It was the end of November, and the low temperature in the morning had marked the start of winter. The room was not much warmer. I was wrong, they got it, but not Jello brand, but at Dole. I don't really care for Dole. I think I would actually prefer Jello. Dole feels like it has preservatives in it, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't feel like real food. Y'all know what I mean? Like, like, you eat Dole, and Dole feels like it's trying to kill you somehow. they just do fruit better, and they do because it's shelf stable. I don't know about that, bro. Like, I feel like their shelf stable makes me is killing me. Hello, Rain. It's raining, so it's interesting that you came. Ah. And they're the main sellers of the high syrup ones. That's probably why. Which also don't help. Yeah, that's probably why. How are we today, people? I'm all right. I'm trying to recover from fucking working 2 jobs, and here we are reading a book. Chat, how y'all feeling? The heater hadn't been turned on either. Either he'd missed the teacher telling him to turn it on, or he'd never seen one in his life. He breathed lightly on his freezing fingers as he aimlessly surveyed his surroundings. Crashing out? Why are you crashing out? Where's the violence? Be patient. We just started. I promise you there will be violence. Remember that Tsukihime, this series, has a fighting game off of it. There will be fighting. This jury place was apparently a meeting room. The other students might have considered it a wonderful place to meet, but to him it was drab and overly spacious. It was drab and overly spacious. It was a lifeless place that reminded him of an arid cave. Stuck in the cold room with absolutely nothing to do, his mind turned to what they wanted to discuss. I was supposed to go to the store at 9 and still haven't left yet. Bro, like, motherfuckers is lucky I am broke, because I would order groceries every day of the week. I do not feel like going to the store. Going to the store is my least favorite activity. It's almost 2 now and people are late to fix my garage. What's wrong with your garage? Does the thing not work? Where's the main character Orf humming for 2 minutes? Unable to come up with a solid answer, he returned his attention to the sound of the rain. The rain hardly resembled the rain in the mountains, though he could still recognize it, barely. I got specific shit to do, and yeah, your car's outside, so I don't know, man. I don't know. Motherfuckers, service people are never on time, and then they always do that thing when they go, oh, I'll be right back, and then they never come back. When I'm done saving from moving, I'm buying a decking couch for sure. As in, you don't have a couch currently? Chat, I might not get a bed when we move. I think when we move out, I think I'm gonna get like one of those Japanese futons and then just fold it and put it in the corner when I'm not using it, because I like actually having a lot of space in the room, and the bed takes up a lot of space. I like shopping when I go to shop for specific food I'm trying to make. I can see that. Just drive through the garage and let the future deal with your repercussions. I have 2, they're just old. Oh, fair. Its smell and sound were harsher, but at the end of the day, rain was still rain. So even this world, alien as it was, could have something in common with the mountains. That trivial detail perked him up a little. He liked how the town looked soaked in rain. Naturally, he preferred sunny weather, but he liked the rain in its own way. The fog and the rain had soaked up the scent of the soil, and it reminded him of home. It was at times like this that he was able to numb the anxiety the city gave him. But then he let out a discouraged sigh. How pathetic. He'd already been here 2 weeks, and thoughts of his hometown still made him sad. Perhaps feeling that he was being unfair to his new life, he composed himself and continued to wait patiently. I have no idea who this man is. As if a passion for distractions, his attention returned to the sound of the rain once more. Waiting like this didn't seem to be particularly hard for him. He quietly endured the numbing cold and the hour alone with calm, deep breaths. As the saying goes, good things come to those who wait. I love when you're trying to go to sleep and it's raining and it calms my brain to sleep. You like having like white noise, and I respect that. I also like having white noise sometimes. Just turn off collision and just phase through the bed. Yeah, I'll do that next time. A strong point of his or not, he was astonishingly patient. It was certainly helping him out at this moment. Just put the bed in your pocket, like Minecraft. She, on the other hand, was livid. The profile of the transfer student had been explained to her on her way to the meeting room. She was told he had lived his whole life up in the mountains without any electricity. That meant more than half the civilized society would have been an utter mystery to him.
Hello, motherfucker.
Hello, Franklin.
なんて絶望的な断絶。戦後どころか戦前の話じゃない。ロビンソンにも程がある。
I don't know who that is. But I hate mouth noises. Okay, so there's a thing, right? I don't really like ASMR. However, like train noises and like rain noises, those are fine. But like actual proper like ASMR, like the finger clicking noises that people like, I don't like that shit. She had every right to be angry. This village had apparently remained isolated in the mountains for many years. Contact with villages in the foothills of the mountains only occurred once a month or so, which was unfathomable to modern Japan. Although expressways in Japan Rail, the old national railways, now span the country like arteries, it wasn't entirely impossible for the mountain villages like his to exist. Somehow I like unboxing ASMR? I see. The way I do it is that I have a YouTuber who makes hour-long videos, and whenever I want to go to sleep, I just put on one of his videos and just close my eyes. Yeah, my VODs should be perfect for that. Especially some shit you don't care about. But she couldn't imagine how someone born to such circumstances would think or live.
電気がないって、村に行き渡っていないだけで公衆電話ぐらいはあったんですよね。
なかったそうだよ。こっちに暮らすようになってまず驚いたのが電話だそうだし、電話って便利ですねなんて真顔で言われてね、そういえばそうだなぁと再確認させられたぐらいだよ。
He shot a sidelong glare his way as he laughed. It seemed that the naivety of the country boy had cheered up Mr. Yamashiro a lot.
駐在もいないってことか。うちも実家は山奥ですから、電気が通っていないのはありえないとは言いませんけど。そいつ、学校も知らないんですか？
I always like choosing hour-long videos because if I choose a 15-minute video, it ends, and I have to turn back over, choose another video, and then by then it would all be I would lose all sleepiness. Well, I mean, I made the joke, but like my VODs are like 3 hours long at the very least, and then some of those like really old ones are like 8 hours long and whatnot. So like you would be good. You wouldn't even really miss that much.
うん。どんなものかは知っていたそうだけど、実際来るのは今日が初めてらしい。それで緊張していたのかな。あまり会話も弾まなかった。ああいうのも野生児っていうのかな。狼に育てられた狼少年みたいな。あ、いや、探検隊の話だね。
Although if I'm looking for a video to fall asleep to, what ends up happening is that I find something I'm like, oh, this looks interesting, and then I actually end up watching the video, and then I just don't sleep. I play some of your videos as background noise while I work. I appreciate that. Like it's 3 hours, so if I listen to one fully 3 hours pass at work, that's how I feel. At one of my jobs, I've been listening to an album, and I'm like, an album is about an hour and some change. So yeah, I definitely feel you on that. I appreciate you choosing me as your background noise, though. I know Life said something about using me as background noise as well.
怖いな青崎くん。冗談だって。そう睨まないでくれ。
I listen to music while I sleep. I feel like that's too distracting. I like my music too much, and I'd be like in bed, like fist pumping.
おとなしい子だったから。なんていうか、 言葉の通じない小動物みたいな感じ？
What was that in reference to, Batra? And when I wake up, I always see the videos over. The only time I've waken up to a video is still playing. It was when he uploaded 8-hour best of the year on a second channel.
Yamashiro sensei, その例え、気休めになってませんから。
As she gave her blunt reply, she tried to simulate in her mind what life without electricity would be like, but the thought of it took her sour mood from bad to worse. After all, it was a world she had never known. She could understand why the teacher had given up. She too wanted to give up and return her to her warm bed. But her good-for-nothing pride was holding her hostage. Not only did the teachers believe she was up to the task, but she also believed she could do it. It wasn't that easy to go back on her word no matter how bad things looked after the fact. Here's the fact, Infinite always handsome as fuck. Thank you, oh my god. She walked along the hallway, the rain pattering in the background. The meeting room was already in sight. With a furrowed brow, she fixed her long hair in anticipation of meeting the unknown stranger within. Her elegant strides were like those of a confident general going into battle.
いや、青崎くん、君を信頼してる僕だけど、念のため確認しておくよ。なんていうか、優しくね。できれば笑顔とか作れないかな。
作り笑いは苦手です。一応努力しているつもりですが。
ああ、そうなんだ。それはよかった。いやー、ほんとよかった。青崎くんにも苦手なものってあったんだね。
You don't have to watch One Piece, just read One Piece. That's what I did. Reading One Piece is significantly less daunting because if you're like me, you read pretty quickly. It's about 1,000 chapters, and like I finished like 100 chapter mangas in like a week, so it's significantly less daunting. Mr. Yamashira's shoulders slumped the second they reached the meeting room. As he put his hand to the door, his eyes seemed to say to her, "Be nice, please." This only made her more irritated.
分かってるわよ。愛想が悪いってのは。でも笑顔なんて意識して作るものじゃないんだし。
So this is really weird for me because the Aoko I know could not give less of a fuck about anything.
だいたいそういうインスタントな人付き合いなら。
And they're over here telling us how responsible and diligent she is. Like the Aoko I know could not give less of a fuck. I mean, I showed you guys the gif in the Discord where she's literally wearing a fucking white t-shirt and jeans. Like, name an anime character that's in a white t-shirt and jeans. Like, she literally could not give less of a fuck. She sighed about her social shortcomings, but then it occurred to her that being called into school on a day off while sleep deprived wasn't anything to smile about anyway. She also thought the person responsible for this mess would be better off attending elementary school. It might not be his fault, but neither was it her duty or obligation to do the teacher's work for them. At the very least. They could have used their brains and organized all of this on a normal school day, another complaint she wanted to voice later.
いや、というか敵。なんであろうと敵。悪いけど、情状酌量以前に敵。間が悪いのはお互い様っていうか、ほんと、なんでよりにもよってこんな忙しい時に。
You're not busy, you were asleep. Her pounding headache from lack of sleep had boosted her aggression by 10%. No matter how harmless the guy on the other side of the door may be, anyone who disrupted her sleep was the enemy. And just as she was reaching peak annoyance, Mr. Yamashiro opened the door to the meeting room. The room slowly slid into view. She didn't care about formalities, just looked straight ahead and stormed into the room, and found herself face to face with the most unusual opponent. Before we go on, let's see this from another perspective. Turning back the clock just a little. Does L wear jeans? Actually, that's a good point. L does wear a white t-shirt jeans, but think about how unserious L was the entire series. You don't have to do anything. For some, those words are a priceless luxury, and for others, they are an unbearable torture. For the proactive girl, it was definitely the former, though she'd be too suspicious of the motives of anyone giving her such a gift to accept it. For the passive boy, it was definitely the latter, a bitter thorn that made him homesick, though at this very moment his mind was still distracted with the wait for his face to reveal any discontent. He's bandaged up, I just noticed that. He maintained perfect posture as he stared at the gray sky. He'd already waited a whole hour. Damn, imagine waiting a whole hour in the fucking cold with no heater or anything. And just be like, just wait here for a moment. But figured they must have had their reasons for making him wait. And as long as he had the sound of the rain to soothe him, he could keep on waiting.
でも、そろそろ9時を過ぎるのか。どうなんだろう。
He'd been vaguely keeping track of the time. Hold on, am I reading chat right? Is Franklin saying that he doesn't like Usopp because he's a coward? Like, you're just wrong? Like, his entire thing is that he's scared, but he's doing it anyway. He's the exact opposite of a coward. Like, you were just actively wrong. Like, the whole entire point of his character is that he's scared, but he's doing it anyway. Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Yes, we're talking about that character, Batra. He had been vaguely keeping track of the time as he listened to the rain. That his weapon was cool? I do like it. Due to the holiday, the school building was completely silent, except for the patter of the rain on the window. The mood felt as damp as the air. It was then he heard heavy clatter of footsteps approaching.
分かった。忘れられているかと思った。
He could hear two sets of footsteps, one heavier set belonging to an adult. He breathed a sigh of relief as the door slid open.
すまないね。随分とお待たせしちゃって。
The first person he saw was a man wearing glasses and an awkward smile. That's Mr. Yamasiro, the one who brought me here.
あれ？里中先生いないんですか？ひどいな。話し相手になってあげてと言ったのに。
He said how cruel he shouldn't have left her here. Mr. Yamasiro scratched his head, looking increasingly apologetic. And then from behind him, with a tight-lipped expression that made it clear that she didn't want to be there, a dark-haired girl with a determined look in her eyes appeared. Ah, would you look at that? The thumbnail. Probably. Sojuro gulped. Sojuro? Sojuro. Like Sojuro, but like not actually. Sojuro. The sound of the rain on the windows faded into nothingness. That's when he knew. That was how it felt when time stood still. This really does look like rain. She blinked quickly a few times as if taken aback. Why was anyone's guess? The boy was everything she expected a naive country boy to look like. However, she felt something she couldn't understand. Oh fuck, he's cute! Oh no, he's hot! His eyes widened slightly as if taken aback. The reason was obvious. Putting his feelings into words was a different matter altogether, so we will never know exactly what he experienced in that moment. That's when it hit him. He sensed he'd been touched by the hands of destiny.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生のしずき宗十郎くん。で、こっちの彼女がしずきくんの案内役。うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
His voice and the sound of the rain seemed distant. This is how they first met. Such was their start, for better or worse, like the ephemeral beauty of fireworks. It was commonly believed among students that Aoko was always in a foul mood. But this gossip was 90% prejudice, as Aoko simply didn't have time to be irritated 24/7. See, Wheeze? The reality was that she simply didn't want to explain herself all the time, and therefore she seemed angry about something, obvious or not. This idle gossip did, however, lead to her earning the title of one of the school's 70 deadly threats. The remaining 10% of the gossip was right on the mark. Aoko herself often had the feeling that her tendency to feel animosity towards harmless things was akin to what a chronic headache sufferer might experience. Today fell under that 10%. For today, her anger was pure, and her childish and selfish display was befitting of her actual age. The meeting room was dimly lit, awash with the colors of the rain. To reduce electricity costs, school regulations forbid the use of lights during the day. That's fucked up and stupid. This was the setting of the three of them found themselves in. Her first impression was that his calm demeanor reminded her of a field of wildflowers. I think the thing that's throwing me off is that they don't have character portraits. This is like a 2000 style game. In spite of his perfect posture, his overall air felt placid, taming. And though describing him as meek would be going too far, at the very least he was passive. Even through his uniform, she could see that he was thinner than average. His dark hair was unkempt, and he came across as wholly forgettable boy. If she had to look at him in a more positive light, she would describe him as a young man than a boy. It was his calm demeanor that made him seem more mature. Was that the cause of Aoko's reasonless reaction? He seemed almost too at home in the meeting room, and she left with the impression that it was her and the teacher, not this outsider, who were the guest here. She felt an unidentifiable aggravation building within her, almost as if her right to be here was in question. Aoko felt herself raising her natural defenses.
信じられない。私、今わけもなく怒ってない。
She hated not understanding things, her own emotions in particular. It pained her less than you would imagine for a perfectionist like her, but it still nagged her like a thorn in her side.
いやーほら、青崎くん、挨拶してあげなくちゃ。
He looks like a young booker from Pokemon. I'll take your word for it. Miss Yamashira's attempt to relieve the tension was equally irritating.
挨拶?
Is this two fuckers from Love is War? Yes! Introduce myself. Oh, no, she said that already. After casting a nasty glance in the teacher's direction, Aoko turned to face the boy. From an outsider's perspective, it might have looked like a stare down. And in that instant, the culmination of her emotional state hurtled towards the innocent boy and skewered him.
いや、待たせたね、しずきくん。
Hearing his name, Sojiro came to his senses. His stunned gaze shook loose. He took a deep breath to clear his head. Chalking up to the nerves, Mr. Yamashiro broke out a smile and turned to the girl standing beside him.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生のしずき宗十郎くん。で、こっちの彼女がしずきくんの案内役。うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
Having been introduced by Mr. Yamashiro, the girl took a step forward. Her eyes were merciless. Her stare, an unspoken threat to violently trample her opponent. Sojiro, on the other hand, managed to keep his own composure despite the shock of how confrontational she appeared. He had never been greeted quite like this before, but supposed, mistakenly, that this was how people treated each other in the city. The exchange must have looked quite dramatic to an onlooker. A girl ready to brawl, an earnest country boy desperate to understand. It was a murderous limbo, especially for anyone in the room with them. Like Mr. Yamaziro, for example. While he had thought he had made the right decision in choosing an honor student to help him out, she was in an inexplicably bad mood, and the tension in the air was undeniable. It was at that moment he realized his failure. His realization had come far too late. One false move, and this girl, for whom no problem was too large, would become a storm that would rock the very foundations of the school. Just as the almighty Joker card could bring either fortune or disaster, the sole teacher who had been present at the time would come to bear the blame for the scandal that ensued.
いけてる。二人とも気は合うようだね。
Just lying.
それじゃあ、僕はこの辺でいいかな。
Bro, this bitch ass nigga. Mr. Yamasura laughed nervously and crept toward the door.
僕は職員室にいるから、終わったら来るように。いいかい、青崎くん。くれぐれもだぜ。なんていうか、生徒会長としての度量の広さを、この際僕に信じさせてほしいかな。
Don't trust the teacher aides? He is a teacher. He's just young. Mr. Yamasura left, leaving the two in a locked-eyed stare, in which one set of eyes was doing all the glaring. All that remained in the room was an artless boy and a cross-armed guarded girl. The two lingered in silence. They resembled shogi players agonizing over their first moves. There was only Aoko who was reading so much into the situation. She decided to put her irritation aside for the time being. With no reason to feel revulsion for him in the first place, she sighed deeply and faced Sojiro.
まあいいわ。山城先生がヒルアンドンなのは今に始まったことじゃないし。
Does the MC a hard ass? See, the thing is that when I know her, hold on, maybe I can find a picture of her real quick. Can I get this picture bigger? There you go. So when I know her, she looks like this. This is what she looks like when I see her. Like, what part of this girl is like serious and confrontational in any way? When I think of Aoko, this is what I see. Talk about a glow up. This is like, she's completely different than how she is in the game, which is why I'm interested to see what happens. Oh yeah, she got Goku syndrome. Like, she's just happy to be around.
それで、あなた名前は？
それで、あなた名前は？ Born to be silly, forced to lock in is exactly how I would explain the situation currently. I have no idea what's going on. Her tone was nothing if not reproachful, though he had done nothing to offend her. But the boy failed to pick up on it. Incapable of such venom himself.
ああ、静木宗十郎かな。君は青崎さんだったね。
For whatever reason, he came across as happy in his response.
さんはいいわ。柄じゃないから。こっちは静木くんでいい？
いいって何が？
だから呼び方。くん付けでいいかって聞いてるの。何よ。おかしなこと言った？私。
いや、すごく。
The boy replied immediately as if it was a natural response, but quickly second-guessed himself.
いや、いいんだ。ごく一般的なんだろう。静木くんで頼む。君は青崎でいいんだよな。
よろしく。
She actually said good, nice to meet you. Yeah, she actually said yes, nice to meet you, but suit yourself probably works better in the context here. Localization is interesting now that I'm starting to actually learn Japanese. Like I can see where the localization is happening. She followed her blunt reply with a swift turn away from him. While she was hardly thrilled at the prospect of the task at hand, it had been entrusted to her, and it was her personal policy to see it through to the end.
悪いけど、優しくしてあげる気はないから。時間も惜しいし、手早く行くわよ。
それは助かる。やっぱり時間は大切だ。
Ako's blunt rancor was lost on him once again. Humans tend to be overly conscious about being ignored, whatever form it takes. But despite being peeved at landing none of her attacks, Aoko did her best to act professional and directed her guests into the hallway. There was no sunlight in the hallway, nor any sign of life. This was more like a prison than the cave that was the meeting room. As it dawned on Aoko that the hallway matched her mood, she sighed once again.
まず聞いておくけど、山城先生から聞いたことは理解してる？
ああ、学校の仕組みについては分かった。この建物全部に同い年の人間がいるなんて、ちょっと想像できないけど。
What do you mean? That's a normal thing, isn't it?
そう、よかったわね。
Aoko rubbed her forehead. This Sojiro kid had no idea what he was in for. Apparently, all he'd heard about the school was that it was a place where a lot of people met to study. Wait, are you telling me this kid was homeschooled? High school teachers imparted to students their knowledge in various fields of study while fostering discipline and creativity. But never did Aoko imagine that she would have to explain the concept of school itself to someone. Yes, fundamentals were important, but this was absurd. She had serious doubts whether he could even handle classes, but Mr. Yamasura insisted that things would work out somehow. Sojiro had managed to pass the transfer exam after all, barely.
ま、私には関係ないけど。
Aoko grumbled mentally as she walked down the hallway. She consoled herself with the fact that today would be the only day she'd spend with this boy of time, or at least she'd try to keep it that way. Yeah, when did they find out that the gym teacher is a piece of shit and have to invade his mind castle? I would like to point out that this visual novel has actual magic in it. I mean, it is called Witch on the Holy Night. Some magic is about to start happening.
Aozaki.
He asked calmly, trying to get her attention.
何？
こっちも一つ聞いていいかな。
だから何？
俺の気のせいだと思うんだが、君はまるで何かを睨んでいるように見える。やはり今朝は悪いものでも。
His gaze revealed earnest concern, as if asking her if she remembered to eat breakfast. It was like another hammer to her head. It was true that Aoko had been glaring at Sojiro the entire time. Glaring red-hot daggers, in fact. Not just at him, but the universe. Even on her best days, her roommate used to remark,
青子の視線は普通の人には厳しいわ。もう少し多くのことに寛大になるべきね。
She'd been warned that her emotions were so naked on her face that people treated her like a powdered keg. How naive could that boy be that he could not pick up on this?
私をバカにしてるってわけじゃなさそうよね。
Yep. Even she found her own attempt to reassure herself unconvincing. Don't stop me now, cause I'm having a bad time, I'm having a tough time, I'm gonna destroy you all. It began to dawn on Aoko far too late. That compared to her, this laid-back transfer student might as well have been from another planet.
いいわ。言葉にしないとわからないようだから言うけど、あなたの気のせいじゃなくて、私は視線で遠回しに感情を表現してたの。いちいち声に出すのも会話にするのも面倒だから。
Because I'm having a breakdown, I'm having a breakdown. Please kill me now. In response to her words, the Martian clapped his hands together.
なるほど。どうしてそうしたいのかはわからないが、確かにそっちの方が手っ取り早い意思表現だ。
Sojiro accepted her reasoning without argument, though he still had no idea what kind of emotion she was trying to express. It was as if he could hear the words but didn't grasp the meaning. Ideas that should have connected were instead separated into blocks.
確かにずれてるわ、こいつ。
Mr. Yamasiro's words made sense to her now. What was odd about this boy went way beyond naivety. A stranger in a strange land he may be, but he was only civilized to forgive him for jet-lag-induced confusion.
じゃ、とりあえずあなたの教室に行くから。
She regained her composure. Sojiro raised his hands and stopped in his tracks.
あと一つ。
Nanda. Aoko waited for Sojiro to continue. The boy was patient to a fault. She rubbed her forehead together. She rubbed her forehead with her hand again, noticing a vague feeling of uneasiness.
これもちょっとした疑問なんだが、なんで君は怒ってるんだ？怒るのが商売とか、そういう家柄の人なのか？
What? Alright, even I'm thrown off. What the fuck are you talking about? A long silence. Though she knew it wouldn't change the situation, she remembered her regret at answering the phone that morning. He meant no harm. She repeated this thought like a mantra in an attempt to keep her impulses in check.
別にあなたのせいじゃないから気にする必要はないわ。ただ、この一瞬とお昼まで眠っていた場合を計りにかけたら、あまりに利益の違いがあって頭を抱えただけよ。
With that vague answer, she started to walk again, and turned her gaze away from this rude stranger named Sojiro Shizuki. While what constitutes normal is certainly up for debate, most would have undoubtedly referred to him as so. He was a simple and nice boy with nondescript features. If he were an ice cream flavor, he would be vanilla. Chad, if you were an ice cream flavor, what flavor would you be? And Sojiro found Aoko to be very businesslike and full of life. There was a certain purpose to her movements, as they began and ended in an orderly fashion. The way her finger raised when she pointed at things, the way she made her way across the hallway in classrooms, the way she would occasionally glance back at him to make sure he was keeping pace. Each and every moment was so impressive that he couldn't take his eyes off her. Sea salt ice cream, cookies and cream, that's my favorite flavor. I know I talk about how much I like chocolate, but I think I would be Superman. Give me 1 second, check. I'm getting a call. Let me unmute myself. It was the second job calling. It was the second job calling to make sure that everything was going correctly. They're extending my contract so that way I'll work another 2 weeks on the second job. Anyway, Rocket Palace says fine peanut butter and chocolate. I don't know if you guys actually know what Superman flavor is, but it's like a bunch of different really sweet flavors combined into one. I haven't had it since I was a kid, but I really liked it when I did have it. And if not that, I'd probably go mint chocolate chip. Aoko showed him to his homeroom, Class C of the 11th grade. The room certainly displayed more of a human touch than his previous meeting room, but Sojiro was none the wiser as to its function. Either cookies and cream or pumpkin pie. I've never had pumpkin pie ice cream. An orgy of ice cream. That's not a good way to describe it, but it's also a perfect way to describe it. So thanks, I hate it. Aoko gave a brief explanation before they visited individual subject classrooms as well as the gym, cafeteria, locker room, and school infirmary. Sojiro asked so many questions that time passed before they reached the AV room on the second floor. Sojiro stopped, looking genuinely concerned.
あと20分経つと1時だ。
嘘でしょ？うちの校舎そんな広くないわよ。
The tour had begun around 10, which meant that 3 hours had passed. A tour of the school shouldn't take anywhere near this long.
そうだったわね。 行く先々で根掘り葉掘り聞かれちゃそりゃ何時間でも経つわ。日が暮れていないのが不思議なくらいね。
That's gross that I'm not reading that out loud. Aoko glared at Sojiro. She was being sarcastic, of course, knowing full well he would never pick up on it. To her surprise, he looked down apologetically, unable to hide his dejection.
なんだこいつ、ちゃんとしてるっちゃ。
The guy before her was now nothing like earlier. In contrast to seeing this his once impenetrable veneer when they first met, she found herself feeling sympathetic. Momentarily, at least, until her irritation returned in full force.
で、何がまずいの？覚えることが多すぎてパンクしたなんて言わないでね。
You should probably not be mean to him, because I think he's gonna take it literally. Like, you've already fucked up 3 times now.
いや、それもあるけど、学校のことは別にして1時になるとまずいんだ。
Sojiro's great gaze wonders if he's worried about something. What is it like lunchtime or something? If he was worried about the weather, he would have a hard time seeing it if he was worried about the weather, he would have a hard time seeing it as there's no windows in this hallway.
へえ、時間を気にするってことは用事があるのね。そう。人の予定を引っかき回しておいて自分だけ好きなようにやろうって言うんだ。なんだ、顔に似合わずいい人ね、君。
いや、褒めても何も出ないぞ。
誰も褒めちゃいないわよ。
She yelled at him, unable to hold back her fury.
で、
それで一体何の用なの？
Soichiro's face lit up as he finally understood what she was asking him. Chat, I think he's just autistic. He's autistic and he's never been to school or around people to understand what social norms are. Therefore, he's just autistic. He's autistic and out of time.
そこは秘密にしておきたい。
Brother. He said with a perfectly straight face.
慣れ始めたつもりだったけど、こいつのこういったテンポには失神しそうになるわ。
Her frustration was natural. She still did everything she could to stifle her feelings and fake a smile.
しずきくん？
She took a step forward.
秘密だってば。
Yeah, like, you're not talking to a normal person. He's going to take everything at face value and literally, alright, brother? You gotta do something. Feeling the mood change drastically, Sojiro took a step back. And another, and another. No matter how many steps he took back, she kept edging towards him. She was smiling, but he thought he could see the blood boiling beneath her skin.
これ、最後の質問にしとくわね。あなた、私をからかって楽しい？
He had no intention of mocking her, though at this point he doubted presenting any evidence to prove this would do much to erase the forced smile on her
わか
face.
った。説明する。
Do you want to scrap? You trying to fight? Leave me alone? Oh, okay. 5 months later, why is he eating talk to me? I don't think she's like that. I don't think she'd let that shit wait for 5 months. It would probably be like the literal next day. Why isn't this bitch talking to me? She held her advance and freed her face from the unseemly smile.
実は1時からアルバイトがあるんだ。でもここはそういうの禁止なんだろ？
そうだけど、あ、禁止されてるから秘密にしようと思ったの？バカね。それなら許可さえ下りていれば問題ないわよ。
知ってる。試験の時に許可をもらってる。
Then why were you being secretive? What the fuck?
へえ。
Aoko's face lit up as she realized he might not be the piece of work she thought him to be. Yet.
しかし、許可は一つしかもらえなかった。
Oh, he liked me for real.
一つって、あなた掛け持ちでバイトしてるの？
これでも2件減らしたんだ。
Nigga.
生活費だけで大変
I take it back. He's like Rocket
学
Pal
費
for
まで
real.
稼がなくちゃいけない。なのに働き先は一つだけというのはあんまりだと思わないか？
いや、あんまりなのはあなたの方だと思うけど。
Though still irritated, her opinion of him changed a little. She was impressed that he was able to take care of his tuition and living expenses on his own. She could also empathize with having no time to oneself. Her anger began to subside. Damn it, can the work gods give me a fucking crumb, please? This nigga got 7 jobs. The words part-time job were about the last thing she ever expected to hear out of this country boy's mouth.
そういうことなら仕方ないわね。いいわ、行きなさいよ。事情は分かったから。
青崎はいいのか？
She had no idea what his question meant, but she at least understood he was trying to be considerate. Which also took her by surprise. She figured he'd be just about dense. What? She figured he'd be just as dense about people's feelings as he was about everything else.
別に。私もこのまま帰るから。
First, though, she thought it was best that they both stop by the faculty room. Mr. Yamasura had mentioned that the transfer procedures had already been completed, so all that remained was for him to sign off on her duties.
先生、案内終わりました。
それはお疲れ様。しずきくんもお疲れ様。それで校舎を回った感想はどうかな？
ありがとうございます。なんというか、とても学校ですね。
そうかそうか。うん、明日から頑張りなさい。
She had no interest whatsoever in this pointless wrap-up meeting.
山城先生のことは気にしないでいいわ。教え子に厄介なことを押し付けてふんぞり返っているぐらい職員室が好きなんだから、何時間でも待ってるでしょ。いえ、待ってるべきじゃない？
そうか。青崎がいいんなら。
There are no thoughts in that head. Look at that man's face. Look at his face. There's no thoughts in that head. He is not thinking about anything. Play that video of a fucking milk carton falling down. Yeah, from SpongeBob.
Hmm?
There it was again. Whatever Sojiro was getting at, Aoko had no idea.
それじゃあ行くよ。今日はありがとう。
He's gonna be the villain? No way.
今日だけよ、今日だけ。
She shooed him away with her hand. His face bent into a broad smile as if he found the gesture endearing. It was a softer expression that she had grown accustomed to seeing out of him. It was the kind of smile that would make anyone smile back. Well, most people at least. Aoko Aozaki didn't betray the slightest hint of a smile.
それじゃあまた。
And with that friendly farewell, Sojiro walked toward the end of the hallway. Or so she thought before he turned to the next class over. Sojiro headed straight for one of the classroom windows, whereupon he opened it with ease. The chilly November air filled the room and soft sounds of the rain doubled in volume. In that instant, she realized his intention with the opening the window. She really wished she hadn't.
いや、待て待て待て！
He already had one leg out the window when she dashed to stop him.
何するつもりよ、あんたは！
何ってアルバイトに行くんだけど。
Me when I fuck up any social interaction.
その窓は人が出入りするところじゃないの。だいたいここ何階だと思ってるの？
She saw the light of understanding dawn in his eyes.
死ぬところだった。2階から降りたら危なすぎる。
危ないのはあんたの頭。
Her insult went right over his head.
あのね、こっちじゃ窓から人は出入りしないの。さっき言っとくべきだったわ。
知ってるよ。時間がないんで慌ててたんだ。
え？
ありがとう。これからは気をつける。
え？ No thoughts. None. Zero. Bro, head empty. Not, you know what? Not even the milk carton. There's just nothing in there. He pulled his leg back inside and closed the window. His school uniform was soaking wet from the rain.
いいけど、私は別に。
He really did want to kill himself, but he's trying to play it off.
あなたがどこから外に出ようが関係ないもの。それより、あなた、本当に明日から学校に来るの？
来るよ。不安だけど案内してもらったし。
He bid her farewell before running away down the hallway. She hoped he would walk down the stairs and leave through the school entrance like a normal person.
大丈夫なのかあんなんで。
The image of him disappearing into the distance popped into her head in spite of her ire. She had no intention of spending any more time with him, and yet she felt strangely anxious. She couldn't tell if the feeling was fueled by concern or irritation. So, like, I don't know how you guys would react, but he did that, like, so confidently, I probably would have just let him jump out the fucking window. Like, he did that, like, so nonchalantly, like it was the most natural thing to do. This is how you make friends, naturally. Why she even got angry with this insignificant transfer student in the first place? A strange day with a strange transfer student resulting in strange emotions. Her head tilted as she reflected on what she would have done more enjoyable that. What? Her head tilted as she reflected on what should have been a more enjoyable day than the irritating experience she just had.
いっか。どうせこれっきりなんだし。
But you will. The sound of the rain echoed quietly all around her. The gray sky seemed frozen in time. It was impossible to discern whether it was morning or evening. Mr. Yamasiro and Aoko were likely the only ones left at school. The unlit classroom looked overly gloomy and ominous as Aoko stood in it alone. She pulled on her left sleeve. Her dainty and remarkable watch showed that it was almost 1 o'clock.
時間合ってる。
When he's actively arcing out the windows, probably would have react. That's what I'm saying. Like, he did that so confidently, like he knew exactly what he was doing. I probably wouldn't have thought to do anything until it was too late. She pulled out her blicky. I thought she was actually gonna pull out a weapon too, Rocket Pal. I know you're making a joke, but I actually did think that. But obviously the point here is that he's saying, oh, it's almost 1 o'clock, but that nigga has never heard of a watch. So how did he know what time it was? She looked at the window at the grounds below. She saw a boy in uniform running through the rain without an umbrella, a sight she must have seen before, but for whatever reason affected her far more than she wished. Here's 3 easy steps to make friends. Step 1, ask them to be your friend. Step 2, throw yourself out the window if they say no. Step 3, profit. Profit from what? Health insurance? Aoko did not stop by the faculty room before heading home. While Mr. Yamasiro's offer to drive her home was tempting, she decided it would ultimately be far more satisfying to ruin his day just as he had hers. She walked as quietly as she could toward the entrance and opened her bright red umbrella. As she had predicted that morning, the rain was waning in the afternoon. At this rate, it would probably cease completely in an hour or so. The distant sunshine would likely have reached her by the time she arrived home.
ま、それも悪くないか。
She shrugged her shoulders in resignation. She neither liked nor disliked rain, but she found herself enjoying her walk home with her red umbrella in hand. The teachers at Misaki High School weren't fond of bright colors, so Aoko's red umbrella was an unusual sight. So fuck 'em. I'm suing you for making me feel bad of not having friends. There's my profit. A ghost story about how the umbrella was once pure white had been making the rounds, but it featured Aoko instead of a ghost. It was with that umbrella that she made her way toward Misaki Station. Misaki Private High School took its namesake from the town it was in. The area was once a sprawl of farmland and woodland, but rapid growth over the last 10 years had led to unprecedented modernization. There were some who fought to preserve Misaki's natural treasures.
残すことには賛成ですが、それでは残すだけになってしまうでしょう。
With those words, the mayor snuffed out the voices of the minority and ushered in a long-term plan for new urban development. More than enough funds to the urban development were collected. and the unassuming town of Misaki became the largest municipality of Misaki City in merely 10 years, even though it lacked the modernity of neighboring Yashirogi, or the elegance of Misaki Hills. I feel like we
それ
should
も当然よね。どういじくっても、もともとが山中の宿場町だ
know
し、
Misaki Hills.
山ごと切り崩すって言うんなら別だけど。
You think there's a freak accident that fuses her umbrella with her hair and that's how she gets so red? I think there's a freak accident in which that kid that we just saw before fuses with her and that's why her hair is red and that's why she also has no thoughts in her head when we see her in Melty Blood. Urbanization had been contained to the lowlands around the station, with most of the hills and mountains still standing as they did 10 years prior. The exhaustion of funds succeeded in protecting the old Misaki where the citizens could not. It became a truly old suburban town, welcoming an increasingly urban population with its vestiges of an old country charm. I'm sorry, what? They're a fusion? I'm making a guess. I don't know for a fact what happens. Like, I'm just saying, like, given how we know her now and how she ends up, what else could there be? Is she still in MC in Melty Blood? No. This is she's the teacher of our main character in Melty Blood. Or Tsukihime.
What the hell is this?
She also does not play a significant role in Tsukihime at all, because the most you hear our main character say about her is, "Oh, my teacher taught me everything I know." That's it. You have a conversation with her, but it's not really all that important to the main story. The main story of Tsukihime is there's vampires now, and your main protagonist wants to fuck one. Any questions? Misaki High School was a private school established long before the town's current state. The original campus, built 50 years ago, was located high in the mountains, making its current location its second incarnation. That's super different? I don't think it is. I think when we actually get to play Tsukihime, you'll see that it kind of starts off very similarly. The path to the old grounds was not only steep and remote, it had become an overgrown game trail. Oh, game trails and hunting, with the passage of time. For these reasons, among others, Misaki High School had been shuttered until almost 20 years ago, when it received a donation from the department store chain that allowed for the construction of a new campus in the city. And thus, Misaki High School reopened its doors, the old woodland campus forgotten. In fact, most of the students attending Misaki High School were not from Misaki at all. The hardy rustic people of this country town preferred prefectural schools to private ones. Truth be told, Aoko herself was one of them. All she had wanted after junior high was to move to Tokyo, where she hoped to spend her days touring her favorite bands on the way to entering a public university. But her hopes were dashed with her sister's departure, so here she was, walking all alone in a town with only a red umbrella to keep her company on what should have been her day off.
思い返してみると、私の人生ってなんか災難続きっぽい。
Her frustration evaporated into the cold December air.
でもま、いっか。退屈だけはしないわけだし。
With those words, her mood brightened a bit as she left the school in her wake. The busier part of town, met her at the bottom of the gently sloping road. Misaki train station was brand new. Once looking no prettier than an abandoned factory, it had been renovated into a multi-purpose structure with huge department stores on its east and west sides. When the department stores first opened, Aoko and her friends had been impressed with their modern feel, but in time the stores too became dated. She had no shopping to do today, so she passed them by. What she really wanted to do was rest at a cafe, but she fought the urge knowing her roommate would never let her see the end of it if she frittered away her money. There's Strucken. She she looked back and blinked. For just a moment, she could have sworn she'd seen someone suspicious in a red dress out of the corner of her eye. Must have been her imagination. The sixth sense chill was experiencing The sixth sense chill she was experiencing down to her spine was a familiar one at this point. She continued her walk home, brushing off the event as if it had never happened. In time, the chill faded and all that was left was the sounds of the town. She sighed heavily. Had she imagined it? Even if it had all been in her head, she was far from comfortable with the feeling that still lingered. Everyone knows that a bitch in a red dress is suspicious. It's true! She grumbled under her breath.
波乱万丈、商売繁盛、諸行無常と。そうそう、忙しさに愚痴を言っても始まらないわ。
Unfortunately, summer and bugs go hand in hand. She could see how bugs could be drawn to the sweet fruit. Rank with grease and heat, the kitchen was closed for the time being. The lunch room had come and gone. Where the fuck are we? But one last battle remained. Dinner time. Only after the evening chaos could the kitchen crew remove their white armor and call it a day. In the midst of the war zone was a lone newcomer. Oh, this is him at his part-time job. Got it. His voice was uneasy, betraying how new he was.
気持ちはわかる。俺もどうかと思うけど、店長の言うことだから、もう笑顔で乗り越えてくれ。これも商店街の明日のためなんだとよ。本気で申し訳ないんだが、雨も止んだし、なんとか行ってきてくれないか？
Vampires?
無事帰ってきた
I
ら
can only
晩飯
assume
おごってやっ
vampires
か
are
ら。
about to happen. His bright orange coworker clasped his hands together as if to beg for forgiveness as he saddled him with unreasonable task. Man, the art in this is really good. 10 years ago, Misaki City was a town of farm and woodland. But everything had changed when the Fire Nation attacked. The front of the station was now lined with tall multi-story buildings, and the residential areas were similarly full of the apartment complexes. The once rustic scenery around the station had long become a thing of the past. Shido Inuzuka was the only place in the city that still contained vestiges of the old town, a pocket of the past inside the urban jungle. The road extended up a conspicuous high hill to an old residential district far from the hustle and bustle of the train station. Long ago, it had been considered unwise to build on high ground, so nobody lived above a certain elevation. Shido Inuzuka, sitting as it did atop a hill in the middle of town, was no exception to that convention and had no residents to speak of. As asphalt continued for some time, eventually giving way to the mountain road that was swallowed into the cover of the trees. A lone vending machine stood to mark the boundary between town and beyond. Instead of normal vampires as housing vampires, were cooked. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure the vampires, the dead apostles, are probably stronger than all the vampires in Helsing, bar Alucard. Alucard could probably take a dead apostle. Even the children knew that there was nothing beyond the new playground and development that so enthralled them. Well, that's not entirely true. There was nothing besides the haunted house. Aoko Aozaki traversed the long slope. Below her, she could see the whole of Misaki. The symmetrical town looked like a miniature set from this height. It would look like a painting if there had been a sea next to it, but unfortunately, Misaki City was very much landlocked. While it was overcast at one moment, the scene was quite breathtaking on clear evenings. With Schrodinger, he could probably take down almost anyone. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think any of the dead apostles, as far as I'm aware, could take out Alucard with Schrodinger. The other vampires in there, though, easily. And the view was the one thing that made an arduous climb worthwhile, and today she had been denied even that.
ああ、雨の日は自転車も使えないし、1日に2回ぐらいバスでも通ってくれないもんかな。
Excuse me. Aoko had been using this road to get to school for almost 2 years now, but the journey had never gotten easier. When I lived in the UK, there was this big ass fuck you hill that me and Pudgy had to climb going to and from the store. It fucking sucked every time. It didn't matter if it was cold or hot outside. That fucking hill sucked.
アリス、まだ帰ってきてないんだ。
With a weary shrug, she put her hand on the rusty iron fence. Quietly, the heavy gate swung open as if to welcome her home. There sits atop that hill a haunted house. That is how the story much shared around the town used to begin. But fresh rumors about— this is a copyrighted song, isn't it? Hit the like button, because copyright. Fresh rumors about the house had sprung to life almost as fast as the town's modernization. Despite being dilapidated and abandoned for many years, lights can be seen inside the house at night. An angry murder of crows often gathers atop the hill before mysteriously vanishing, sure to get lost in the fog, never to be seen again. Late at night, a shriek sound can be heard all the way to the town. This peculiar piece of slander was the one Aoko wished to discredit the most. The final rumor was of an eye-catching luxury car that sometimes made its way up and down the hill. The lawyers will be at my door to assassinate me soon, so hit the like button. It's true! Hit the like button, please! The rumors spread and grew by the day. And while they grew, the house that everyone thought had rotted away was restored over recent years. Deep in a wood on top of a hill no one dared to approach. Like a ruin shrouded from view even on the brightest of days, stood a relic out of time, a building from a fairy tale. The house. It was a Kuonji mansion. Everyone in town knew about the witch's house on the hill. It was an unabashed haunted house where Aoko Ozaki resided for reasons known only to her. Needless to say, it was not really haunted. The Kuonji family home was a grand Western-style mansion with a long and storied history, stretching all the way back to England. This is really like Rin in her mansion in Fate. It was too small to be a dormitory, yet too big to be called a house. Saying it now, witch vampire, double trouble? I don't think so. A haunted mansion is someone called Luigi. He really hates healthcare. The main building contained as many as 3 normal houses worth of rooms and was surrounded by a large, all-encompassing courtyard. The perimeter of the grounds was surrounded by a high iron fence covered in thorny vines. There was also an annex to the main building. Given such extravagance, it was no wonder it inspired rumors. The town residents, the mere existence of such a lavish and out-of-place mansion on top of a hill was cause for suspicion. Rumors, lies, and slander were prices to be paid for the fame. With only 2 lodgers, it was hard to disagree with the perception that vampires must be living here.
ま、私はともかく、アリスはそういうのやりかねないし。
She put her hand on the front door. It was a grand double door that would have paired well with a brass lock, and yet it was secured with little more than a simple keyhole. Pushing it open with one hand, she entered the supposedly haunted house. And by the way, if vampires were not enough to scare you, ghosts were known to appear on certain nights. Thank you, narrator. Much like the weather outside, the foyer was overcast with shades of gray. Perhaps by deliberate design, the architect Hello, Zetosakling. Perhaps by deliberate design, the architect had chosen not to include any lights in the entrance area. Why? That's kind of strange. Also, there's two lights right there, next to the fireplace. The ceiling was 2 floors high. The only light in the room came from the skylight. It was particularly gloomy on rainy days. On moonless nights, it was like the world itself ceased to be. Aoko decided the drawing room to the east would be a good place to rest, but knowing that she would not be able to relax until she changed clothes, she started up the stairs. The stairs curled up the wall to the second floor hall. Yeah, for a haunted mansion, this place is pretty nice. Yeah. You think there's ghost caterers? There was a 3rd floor attic as well, accessible from the far end of the hall. I don't know anything about what you're talking about, except Jake Paul sucks. She had never set foot in there in the 2 years she had lived here, though. Where's the ghost cat girl maids? Yeah, I was promised ghost cat girl maids. The Kuonji mansion was more or less divided into 2 wings, east and west. Aoko had been given the entire east wing, but 2 rooms were more than enough as far as she was concerned. She had no desire to open a door that would trap you in a storybook world or lead to an attic that had been used for storage these last 5 years. Aoko's room was at the end of the east wing's long corridor. She had elected for a smaller room for no other reason than she thought it would be easier to clean. It was furnished with a large bed, her beloved mahogany desk, a wardrobe and chest for her clothes, and 2 9-shelf bookcases. That was the extent of what she brought from home. Her entire life of 16 years reduced to this. She'd also borrow the next room down for her own purposes.
そうだ。アリスにもらった見張りと壊れてないかチェックしないと。
She needed to see if the project she had been working on all night had borne fruit. The study next door served as proof of the life she'd been living for the last year and how different that life was from the one she'd lived before. It was not a room for the person she had been. It was a room for the person she would eventually become. A place of solitude that only she could enter, or so she thought.
うわ、壊れてるどころか跡形もなく消え去ってる。やっぱ自己流アレンジはまだ早かったか。いいわよ。笑いなさいよ、コマ撮り。
That was not a robin. The nosy neighbor that had intruded on her sanctuary flew away. While not exceptionally talented, Aoko did not lack for effort and was not afraid to fail. One could have almost mistaken her for an optimist, for optimism. She changed out of her uniform and returned to the first floor. Down the stairs, she opened the door to the east wing into the corridor as dark as a cellar. The absence of windows meant it was pitch black without the lights on, so she flicked the switch and entered the nearby doorway. Sandy.
電気のない生活か。想像したくないな。
It had been her idea to update the drawing room. The walls were decorated with extravagant patterns, and around the room were large, majestic sofas. No, see, is it a second? I have a censor button specifically for stuff like that. And a luxurious Persian rug. Amidst it all was a 30-inch television that seemed completely out of place. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea what you guys are talking about for the last 30 minutes, as me and my brother had an interesting time of killing a roach that was behind my couch. Oh, gross. I don't really think you missed anything. We just decided that the dude is actually stupid. There are no thoughts behind those eyes. It stood looking over the other furniture like the emperor with no clothes on. or with no clothes, excuse me. The mansion's owner would have rather done without it, but to a commoner like Aoko, it seemed an essential commodity. They had fought over its presence at first, but eventually came to an agreement and now mutually enjoyed the modern comfort.
なんだ、人のことは言えないか。うちも案外時代錯誤な家だった。
Now in a somewhat pleasant mood, she decided to brew some tea. Despite the fact that it's probably like 70 degrees outside and the sun is shining, I'm also in the mood for some tea because the game is actually very good at giving it the sleepy, rainy kind of feel. It does feel very sleepy and rainy right now. She boiled some water in the kitchen and prepared a teapot and made herself some black tea. With a flop, she sank into the sofa. She took a sip of her tea, then another. A root beer float? Maybe orange soda. Huh, I haven't had an orange soda float ever. I gotta go. There's a tremor warning inhabiting my area. Stay safe, man. Hope everything will be okay after everything's said and done. Lulled by the ticking of the clock, she took a third sip as she pondered how to spend her afternoon. The sofa almost seemed to be inviting her, and she sunk even further into its comforting embrace. Aoko blearily opened her eyes as she lifted her body from the cushions. Okay, look, we found a priest. Or a woman of the cloth at the very least. I guess technically the word would be a nun, but her hair isn't covered, so I'm gonna go with priest until said otherwise. This is no dream or delusion. At some point, a girl had sat down across from her. Not the least bit surprised, she reached for her teacup, but the tea within it had gone completely cold. She asked the question to the girl on the other side of the table. The girl answered without lifting her gaze. When silent, she could have been mistaken for a beautiful doll. The girl sitting on the opposite sofa was reading an old book. She had delicate limbs and pale white skin. Not a hint of humanity emanated from her melancholic aura. She had darker hair than Aoko, and her icy eyes were focused on the pages in front of her. Her clothes resembled that of a nun, but were actually her school uniform. Oh! In Aoko's humble opinion, the gleaminess suited her. She evoked something like out of a painting. There was something unreal about her, as if she were frozen in time. The white of her... Sorry, I had a brain fart reading that. The white of her gently arched neck was so lovely that even Aoko found herself enchanted by it. So that was a weird sentence, but apparently in Japan there was a, you know how like back in like the old country days, cowboys liked ankles? The same thing with Japan except with necks. That's what that weird. That was a really weird thing to say if you don't know the context of that. The girl was one of the haunted house's 2 residents. Her name was Alice Kuonji, and she was the same age as Aoko. Is that why turtlenecks are popular? I don't know why turtlenecks are popular. I think they're very uncomfortable. Alice answered indifferently, not that it bothered Aoko, who was now used to it. She looked at the clock on the wall and saw that it was already 7. She had been asleep for 2 hours. The day had been a rough one for her, and she slept little the night before, so it was no surprise that she dozed off for as long as she had.
せっかくの紅茶が冷めちゃったじゃない。
私が来た時はもう冷めてたわ。
でしょうね。行ってみただけよ。
Aoko drank down the rest of her cold tea in one gulp. In the poorly heated Kuonji Mountain, it was more than enough to clear her head and wake
こ
up.
うなるとフォートナム&メイソンも何もないわね。
I don't know what she actually said, but she didn't say anything about Britain.
おかえりアリス。玉の贅沢もあんた抜きじゃ閉まらないってことかしら。
Cute.
今日は薬日か天中殺か。ちょっと早いけどお参りってのも十分ありかもね。
Aoko shrugged her shoulders as if resigning herself to her fate.
それで何があったの？
After 2 years together, they knew each other quite well. Aoko had one way of asking questions, and Alice had another. Alice asked without raising her head, and Aoko gave her the details.
まず謝らなくちゃいけない。昨日徹夜で完成させた例のあれ、意味がなくなっちゃったのよ。ちょっと目を離した隙に沸騰しすぎて壊れちゃったみたい。そうならないよう循環のコードを 2,3 本外したり縫合したりしたんだけど。
Aoko tried to laugh it off as if it was someone else's problem.
どういうこと？
今朝休養が入って学校に呼び出し受けたの。そこで転入生の世話を押し付けられて一日が無残にも消費されちゃって、帰ってきたら跡形もなく消えてました。
You want to yap fast? What are you, a JJK watcher?
怒るアリス。
別に青子の器物破損にいちいち怒っていたら一生分の口論をすることになるでしょ。代用品はあるからまた一から始めればいいわ。それより怒ってるのはあなたの方じゃないの？
Alice was very much on point today. It was true that despite outward appearances, Aoko was seething with frustration. That aside,
この転入生っていうのがひどくずれててね。
well, after that fun experience, I cleaned up my area so it doesn't feel as dirty, so yay. That's always a good feeling. Sitting down after cleaning, like, the cleaning is always annoying, but sitting down after cleaning is really nice.
すごい山奥で暮らしてたらしくて、こっちの常識が通じないんだから。三問以下って言葉があるけど、あれって本当のことなのね、アリス。
Alice raised her head in response to hearing her name. But Aoko kept going on before she could get a word in edgewise. Aoko, after all, expected no sympathy in the first place.
初対面から尺に触るやつだったけど、教室を案内した時なんか失神しそうになったわ。そいつ、教室で教師と1対1で授業を受けるもんだと思ってたらしいの。それはそれでまだ流せる。許容範囲よ、あの程度の冗談は。で、私が簡潔かつ丁寧に教室の何たるかを教えた後で、それで青崎、他の教室は何に使うんだですって。教室に他も何もないでしょ。なんていうか、そいつは少しでも説明を怠るとそのままで納得しちゃうのよ。何も疑問に思わないというか、想像力が欠如してるっていうか、想像することに慣れてないっていうか。
No, he's autistic.
まあ一度言ったことはちゃんと分かってるっぽいからバカってわけじゃないんだけど。
あなたが人を批評するのは珍しいわね。そういうダメな人気にするたちだったの？
みじんたりとも気にしないわよ。けど明日からどんな間違いをしでかすのかちょっと心配なだけ。
So you could care less. You just lied. What she was really worried about was having to clean up that mess What she was really worried about was having to clean up that mess if and when it happened. That had to be it. If not, it would mean she had no real idea why she could not get him out of his head.
とにかく変なやつな
Out
の。
of her head.
案外アリスと気が合うかも。
三問一回はいい言葉ね。
But from her eyes, it was clear that the question of whether they would get along was irrelevant, given that they would never meet in the first place. Well, that probably guarantees that they were about to meet. Aoko gave a non-committal response.
ところでアリス、 さっきから何読んでるの？
霊的進化論の二次創作、スピリチュアルダイアリのまがいもの。
ああ、スウェーデンボリー。そんなの今更読んでも仕方ないんじゃない？
新書なら退屈だけど、これは偽書だから。彼の欠点と長所を劇的に褒め上げている。よくできた冒険小説のようよ。立ちはだかる秘密組織の名前がカントとか気が利いているわ。筆跡はあなたのおじいさんのものだけど。
へえ、あの人そういう趣味まであったんだ。割とユーモアがあったのね。惜しい人を亡くしたわ。
Aoko seemed nostalgic over her now deceased grandfather.
あなたのおじいさん、夏に頼りをくれたけど。
よしてよ、死んだものと考えたいのに。
Aoko sighed and lay back on the sofa. The soft cushions caved in under her weight.
話は戻るけど。
Alice shot a glance at Aoko. Her body buried in the sofa remained as still as a corpse. It was clear Aoko had turned out of the conversation. Alice silently chastised her with a look. The more she thought about it, the less important the events of the day seemed to become. If she just ignored Alice, the conversation would end there. They would eventually get up and leave today's mistake unresolved for another day. However, that's not the kind of person Aoko Ozaki was.
いいわよ。何？
She asked, still lying down.
今日できなかったのは少し痛いわね。
だから反省してるって。学校優先は一人前になってからでしょ。
Alright, now we get in the term full-fledged mage, and I'm wondering if this works the same way that it does in Fate. So, Rakapal, you and I gotta pay attention. I guess Batra too. Batra, you know how mages work in Fate. You were there for that
なら
part,
いいけど。
if you even remember. That was like a whole ass year ago. The coldness in her voice made Aoko gnash her teeth. She knew what Alice wanted to say. She knew better than anyone. The veneer she wore for school was different than the way she lived at home. This is exactly the same as Ren. While it could be called hiding in plain sight, Alice thought it was silly. And what the silence told her was,
覚悟を決めろって言いたいのよね、あんたは。
today's failure was not a colossal one. She just happened to upset the delicate balance between her home and school lives, chasing one at the expense of the other. And yet, that careless mistake was a clear sign of Oko's lack of commitment.
アリスは関係ない。これは私が私で決めなくちゃいけないこと。
She hadn't only known for sure that for the last year and a half, but she had a hunch for as long as she could remember. Make the choice and the day will come. It was little wonder that her morals and conscience had been stripped away. Aoko pushed herself back up. She was met by Alice's cold beauty and wordless gaze.
オッケー、アリス。来週中に決着をつけよう。それでいいんでしょ？
ええ、青子がいいなら。
Aoko could not help but shake her head, feeling like she was hearing something similar for the second time that day. Even in the comfort of her own, she could not banish thoughts of the country boy from her mind.
じゃあ、下準備はよろしくね。私まだできないし。
場所は例の公園でいい？
妥当な線ね。あ、でももう一軒の方は？そっちの方が急務じゃない？
時と場合、森に変化があれば教えるわ。
After that brief exchange, Alice returned her attention to the book on her lap. Shop talk was over. Now they could return to their normal relationship as roommates. Aoko grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Since Alice was busy reading, Aoko decided to tune into a variety show that had already started. Alice started to speak up, but suddenly cut herself off. That seems really weird for a character like that. What were you about to say? One of her delicate hands raised to her mouth. She would always cut herself off the second she realized she was about to say something trivial. Sometimes her self-restraint would hit too late, and she would make a gesture like she was making now. in this whole estimation and only a box TV. This came out in 2012 when box TVs were still a thing. So maybe they're much poorer than you think. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. It occurred to Aoko that the sound sounded her that the ah sound her cute little roommate made just now was different from the wah she blurted in times past. Wah.
Nani?
Aoko turned down the volume of the TV. Her intense eyes lit up like those of the
ど
mischievous
うと
cat.
いうことはないんだけど。
ないんだけど
Alice looked away bashfully, not knowing if she should bring it up or not. It was times like this that her expression carried real warmth and surprising charm. If you could see her in this moment, Alice's father would have had to admit that her name suited her perfectly.
今日帰ってくるときおかしなものを見て誰かに話そうと思っていたんだけど。
Aoko nodded, beckoning her to continue.
つまらない本当に意味のないことよ。けどどう考えてもそんなことをする理由がわからない。青子、人間ぐらいの大きな猫がひょこひょこ出前をする理由ってわかる？
No, she saw a mascot. For a second, Aoko thought Alice was trying and failing miserably to make a joke again. One would think that about anyone, really. But she seemed completely serious. Even if Alice's sense of humor fell flat for Aoko, the story had already sounded more fanciful than Alice's usual attempt at jokes. Aoko concluded that her roommate was talking about something she had actually seen.
その話には2つぐらい信じがたい部分があるけど、1つずつ論破していい？
いいの。私もからくりぐらいは思いつくから。ただ理由がわからないから聞いてるの。わざわざ精巧な猫のぬいぐるみを着て出前のてんやものを届けに行くことって。
Oops.
難易度以前にそれをやる人間の常識性を疑うけどね、私は。
It's probably your country bumpkin friend who had as a part-time job. That's probably all it was. Alice nodded tentatively at her words.
ま、世の中いろいろあるから、私たちみたいなのもいれば、下界から遮断された山奥で暮らしていたやつまで10人十色よ。私だったら見かけたら声かけて理由を尋ねただろうけど。
Alice's gaze drifted at that.
暮れゆく住宅街にさまよう出前猫か。背景が夕焼けだったらファンタジーだったでしょうに。で、今日の夕飯どうする？せっかく話が出たし、私らもてんやものにしようか。
Aoko loved getting takeout, and her face glowed as she spoke. They had no rules for dinner, but if one of them was in the mood to cook, they made it a point to make enough for two. At the very worst, that meant entire weeks without dinner, but the two of them agreed that this was the system that worked best for them. Whether they found cooking to be too much effort or simply like ordering out, nights like this one were a common occurrence, much to the chagrin of the restaurants of Misaki Town. Delivering it to the mansion meant coming all the way up to the top of the hill, the source of their
時
disgruntlement.
間は8時前。ギリギリセーフね。私今月がいいな。あそこの月見そば最近ご無沙汰だったし。
The hungry student council president laid out a stack of takeout menus, like she had a fan of deck of cards, and excitedly scanned for anything that stood out. Alice casually responded without sparing so much as a glance.
悪いけど私夕飯済んでるの。
Nani? With those words, Aoko froze. All deliveries required a minimum of 2 items, and she was out of luck without an accomplice. Cruel society had decided it couldn't be bothered to deliver to a princess who had only ordered a single serving of food. Oh Jesus, that's where it was on the. Hold on, that's a great indication. That's where their fucking mansion is. Of course they wouldn't want to deliver up there. You know how fucking far that is? Up a hill too? Fuck that. I don't think most of chat drives. You guys ever drive down a hill? That shit is terrifying. Well, it might just be terrifying to me specifically because I'm from Illinois and Illinois is literally all flat, but can you find the mansion? How do you say mansion in Spanish, chat? You know, the amount of times my bowling balls have almost hit my phone were a lot more than I would like to admit. Did I tell you guys that I bit through my phone screen? Sometimes sometimes when I need to hold multiple things, I put my phone in my mouth and my canine tooth broke through my phone screen. Incidents to counteract orders from the Hilltop Mansion, the restaurant had declared. The minimum number of orders will be 3 starting next year. Feral? No, I'm just not beating the vampire allegations. Oh, I'm getting another call. Give me 1 second. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Again, they're trying to set up the second part of the thing that they want me to do for my contract. So you just called me back to say that. Anyway, Aoko and Alice were still in the dark to this fiendish change in direction.
この裏切り者だから帰ってくるのが遅かったのね。帰宅部、学校までバス徒歩込みで片道20分のあんたがなんで5時以降に帰ってくんのか考えるべきだったわ。
Unfortunately for Aoko, she had been too out of it to even remember that she was the one who fallen asleep.
ああ、ひどい女。そういう時は残された一人のためにお土産買ってくるのが暗黙の了解だったのに。私だってこの前の外食の時はアリスの分も買ってきたじゃない。
It was unknown how serious Aoko was being, but she was visibly angry. She had already woken up to hungry that morning, and from the time she was called into school until now, she had consumed nothing but tea. It was a small miracle that her stomach was not growling. She knew that it was her own fault, but she persisted, wanting to get revenge on Alice for scolding her earlier.
この前ってあれのこと？あなたが都心に出向いた時、夕食にお寿司を食べてきたのに、お土産はなぜかコンビニエンスストアのビニール袋だったって話？
Okay, yeah, that is kind of fucked up. Aoko had kicked a hornet's nest.
何よ、買ってこないよりはマシでしょ。
真実は時に隠蔽すべきね。
Alice's icy glare pierced through her, right through her. Aoko had certainly crossed the line by going on and on about how the sushi circled around the restaurants while Alice ate her convenience store meal. But new things fascinated her, and she couldn't contain her curiosity towards the conveyor belt sushi shops that started popping up at the time. There was nothing short of miraculous. Even honesty can be a sin, given the right circumstances.
わかった。わかりました。じゃあ今回のは前のと帳消しってことでいいわね。
Alice went back to her book without so much as recognizing the question. The fact that she did not confirm it made Aoko anxious.
仕方ない。今日は薬日だし、おとなしく台所に立って料理の腕を磨くとしましょう。
I don't know how they did the texture on her sweater, but it looks very comfortable. She stood up, announcing her intent to no one in particular.
あ、聞き忘れてた。アリス、どこで夕食済ませたの？
Alice's hand froze on her current page. She suddenly shut the book she was reading, stood up as if at wit's end. She walked across the drawing room with her book in hand. When she reached the door, she stopped and turned toward Aoko.
聞きたい。
まあ、なんとなく。
Aoko nodded timidly, she cowed by Alice's sudden vigor. Alice continued her matter-of-fact way.
その猫が余ったメニューをくれたのよ。
And with that brief response, she left the room. Okay, we've gotten past chapter 1. I guess we saved. So because nothing's really happened yet, I think we're gonna keep going. We'll save Mugenics for tomorrow. But good news is that we're gonna be doing Mugenics all day. So people who are waiting for that, you'll get 2. You'll get a while of that. So like nothing's really happening yet, so we're gonna keep pushing on. The Mugenics today, but Mugenics tomorrow. Think of it.
けど慣れれば割と住みやすいとは思う。
Sojiro sighed listlessly. He looked down at the winter school year below, lost in thought. December was written on the corner of the chalkboard. He could not believe 10 days had already passed since he transferred to the school. The last vestiges of autumn had faded with the change of the month. The trees were... okay, so it skipped ahead for a week, so we probably get to see what they were doing or what they were talking about that one time. Also, I should probably write down the timestamp for chapter 2 starting. That might be good, right? That cleared alone? Probably. That's why I said I think a lot of this music is actually copyrighted, so hit the like button. The trees were all but barren, and the ground below them a mat of fallen leaves. Fourth period was classics. Another lead teacher stood at the lectern and rambled on. While he had finally gotten used to the classroom, he still had a long way to go to get up to speed in his classes. Lacking even basic understanding most students learn in their early scholastic life, it was a battle for Sojiro to keep up. Even if he was unable to grasp all of the content right away, he at least tried to memorize everything in the hope that he could make use of it down the road. Cleared alone is public domain? You don't know how YouTube works, do you? Which is why losing himself in his thoughts was about the last thing he should have been doing. He would normally chastise himself for daydreaming, but... Troublingly, he was unable to concentrate in class today. Sojiro could not place the source of his lack of concentration. It could not have been the winter in the city. It was much milder than in the mountains, and then there was his part-time job particularly tiring. He was not any more physically fatigued than the average students, so that could not be it either. Others might conclude that it was because of the courses were boring, but that seemed to him off the mark too. Sojiro did not share his classmates' opinion about their classes. On the contrary, he rather enjoyed his class time. No, his frame of mind was not to blame either. Trying to figure out what was wrong only made him more depressed.
いけない。こんなんじゃ気が散る一方だ。
He scolded himself and turned his attention to the chalkboard. The rhythmic ticks of the chalk were sending him into a slumber, but he somehow managed to resist the lullaby. Yeah, so the way YouTube works is that even if something is public domain, you can still get copyright claimed because someone did a cover of that song. And I'm sure other YouTubers have explained how the YouTube's copyright system sucks ass before me. So, and yet he was still unable to focus on class. Sojiro reflected silently as was his custom, and sighed inwardly. Deep down, he knew the real source of his agitation. The events of the previous night were the only thing it could be. But the chime to what happened the previous night? With the chime to signal the end of classes, the teacher bowed and exited into the hallway. To see him off, the 30 or so students all stooped from their desks. So Ragapal and Batra, I didn't get confirmation on this, but I'm gonna ask you guys to pay attention to the magic that happens in this and how similar it is to Fate. The Fate Stay series. Are we talking about parasite magic again? Not that. God, I hope not. I hope I never see that shit again. That shit was gross. The clock, which had seemed to slow dramatically around the 11:30, now struck noon. The tension seemed to fade from the room all at once. The release from a difficult lesson was the start of lunchtime to highlight the highlight of school life. The Misaki cafeteria was not particularly known for its quality of food. Complaints that the quality was below that of a private school went unheeded. And the same unique flavors appeared on the menu each and every day. Private school prices coupled with subpar quality led to the majority of students to opt for box lunches instead. Sojiro's Class 2C was no exception. The boys muscled as many as 10 desks into what resembled a long dining table. Conversely, the girls divided themselves into smaller tables of 2 or 3 desks with practiced ease and started chatting with their cliques. Like I said, I hope we never see that shit again, Batra, because that was probably my least favorite use of magic I've ever seen. That shit was gross. Not a single student wasted even a second of their precious lunchtime. Where both sides differed in method, they shared a common goal. Sojiro was struck dumb by the efficiency of the transformation. Even after 10 days, he was unable to keep pace with the rest of his class and remained seated where he had sat during the previous period. The voice came from the large makeshift dining table near the window. Look, it's not Junpei. Hosuke Kinomi was beckoning him over and leaning back in his chair in a way that looked like he could fall backward at any second. He was regularly shot down by others in the class for being lazy and crass, but his earnest nature kept him from getting on anyone's bad side. Though sometimes though something could be said for not being so forthcoming all the time too. It's Unpei Jori.
昨日店の残り物もらいすぎたんだよ。春巻きだよ春巻き。それを見た親父がさ、もらったもんは残すなってうるさくてさ。
They literally, from the way his face is drawn, it literally looks like they drew Junpei, and then instead of giving him a baseball cap, they gave him hair. It seems his endgame was to find someone who might take pity on him and trade him for something better. The two of them worked at the same restaurant, so he was one of the few people Sojiro knew before starting school. He's also the reason that Sojiro was able to learn the true meaning of the phrase, can't live with them, can't live without them.
お、いいな。しずきも来いよ。今日は待ちに待った缶詰祭りをすっからさ。ついに結婚するのかよ。誰か冷静になった方がいいんじゃないのか。バカ、すげえ楽しいってきっと。そりゃパチモン臭いけど、カニ缶とか食い放題なんだぜ。サバ缶じゃなくて。
マジ？やったー！俺も参加する。コンビーフは一人1個？それとも早い者勝ち？
お前な、一人で何個も食えるもんじゃねえぞあれ。うまいのは最初の1個だけだって。しずきたちが来るならノルマは一人7個に下がるのか。助かるな。
ところで木の実の弁当の中身、なんか缶詰より硬そうじゃね？
The boys usually passed the time by making fun of each other's lunches, but today they were united against a common foe. A pyramid of countless cans stood in the middle of the table. They had not been traded from a pantry of a certain student's house, and the expiration dates on them had been scribbled out with a marker.
よしやろうども。各自毎缶切りの用意はいいな。食べるも地獄、残すも地獄。我ら5次元目の授業はないものと恐れぬ修羅となり。
The fuck are we doing?
Are
we about to eat expired food for shits and giggles?
食材は下町の何でも紹介、マーケット中山からの提供です。
ヒュー！バカも休み休みイエーイ！
The boys united as one and hoisted their can openers into the air.
ほら、しずきも食べようぜ。缶切りならまだあるからさ。
いや、君らの弁当の毒味はごめんだって昨日言ったはずだ。それにその缶詰半分以上賞味期限切れてるだろう。
If you drink an entire gallon of expired milk, I'll give you 10k. See, sometimes the money isn't worth it. So let's ignore the fact that the milk is expired. If I drank an entire gallon of milk, I'd die anyway. I'm more or less lactose intolerant. So the gallon of milk would just kill me, let alone expired milk. 10k is not worth it.
なんだよ、釣れねえな。
Quite an inexplicably excited group of guys. The real motivation seemed to be to spread the pain. Okay, quarter gallon. I don't know if I'd still do it for that either. But moved by their energy and conceding defeat, Sojiro got up from his seat and joined them. Before he could.
じゃあ
たちが釣り上げよっかな。しずきくん、あんなの放っておいて一緒にどう？
Goddamn, how you doing? Another interested party joined the fray. A girl with short but stylish hair had called out to them. She had also tried to get Sojiro to join the track and field club several days earlier.
いや、そっちも遠慮したいな、できれば。
He answered with a troubled look on his face. On their table was nothing but a pile of fruit Sojiro had never seen before.
なんで？パパイヤとか嫌い？マンゴーもあるし、ヤシの実だってあるし、内緒だけど、夕張メロンもあるんだから。
Alright, I don't really fuck with coconut as a fruit, like by itself, but papaya and mango kick ass. I don't know what a yubari melon is though. The members of the fruit group pumped their fists in unison at least at the last delicacy.
待て、なんだヤシの実ってあれ食えるもんなの？
Can they eat those? That's a good question.
あ、マンゴー余ったら回してほしいな。
バカ、肉食え肉。そんなんだから貧弱な体してんだぞ、お前ら。
Damn, what a meathead ass take. Sojiro couldn't keep track of all the voices flying across the room. My boy working hard, he stayed working. My man got 7 jobs.
わかるのはどっちも破滅的だってことだけだ。
The fun school time activity of giving yourself botulism. The guys are giving themselves botulism. The girls are they're just trying fruit. That being said, he found it difficult to refuse them outright. His tendency to accept others' goodwill at face value occasionally left him frozen with indecision. Not accustomed to the regular human interaction, he was unable to judge when it was or was not appropriate to turn someone down. Someone tapped the lost little lamb on the shoulder.
ほっとけほっとけ。いちいちここのバカどもに付き合ってちゃ人生台無しだ。適当に流しとけばいいんだよ。ほら、お前らもな、善良な羊を悪の園に引きずり込んでんじゃねえよ。
An inappropriate loud voice echoed through the classroom from behind him.
副会長。
Sojiro turned around to see a boy who about a head taller than him. His long hair, and while unkempt, had been brushed back, giving it appealingly windswept look. His attractive features bellied the contempt of the classroom his eyes carried. Oi, dickhead, stop giving yourself botulism, yeah? Fucking plonkas. Unlike the perpetually dopey-looking Sojiro, he was an extremely attractive boy, capable of captivating anyone who so much as glanced at him. In most cases, such a boy's presence would be met with awe and respect. However,
なんだよ、副会長様のお出ましかよ。てめえらのバカ顔にはコリゴリだって学食に陣取ってたんじゃなかったのかよ。
Wordy boy? Guess so. Skydam, I don't actually know anything about this game specifically. I've played Tsukihime and I've played Melty Blood, but my chat has not. So, going in more or less blind, I just know it's about Aoko.
Aoko 女子といい、飛び丸殿下といい、しずきなんかヤバいことしちゃったのか？
しずきくんは校則違反しないじゃん。ちょっとそれ以外のルール破るだけで。ってことはやっぱり築地くん、青崎に振られてからそっちに走ったって本当だったのね。
What the fuck is happening? Are they why did we suddenly get to gay shit? Original or remake? Original. We might play remake after this. If you're curious about who my waifu was, it is the soft maid. I can't remember her name because I played it 5 years ago, but the soft maid was my favorite one. I do quite like Arcoid in CL though. They continued to give him a hard time. Sojiro could not help but feel sorry for him. I gotta say CL is my queen. CL is a good choice. Like, you cannot go wrong with CL. The class vice president, on the other hand, showed absolutely no reaction whatsoever. He glared at them with a bored look and simply raised his voice.
相変わらず無駄に元気があって結構じゃねえかてめえら。
That is not what I expected him to
そんな
say.
に活力たぎってんなら冬季特別清掃班にだって参加できるよな。おい、今んところ自主的に申し出てるのは全校で一人しかいねえんだ。西全員が参加すりゃ俺も青崎も肩の荷が下りるってもんなんだがよ。
The menacing growl in his voice contrasted greatly with the boy's well-constructed look. Both Team Canned and Team Fruits were doused like a fire being smothered. This is partly due to their fear of the boy, but mostly due to their fear of the Special Winter Cleaning Team. Yes, the Special Winter Cleaning Team. Joining meant spending part of your winter break cleaning up the old school building and mountainous rear courtyard that had been neglected by the previous two student councils. It was a form of legalized torture that could potentially ruin whole days of your winter break. And forget about any compensation in the form of extra credits. No, it's Poland's volunteer work for a student council project, and it's practically a miracle that they have found even a single volunteer.
いや僕らちょっと体弱いんでスミッチョで缶詰食べてますね。
There's a movie coming up for Witch on the Holy Night. That's why we're playing it. I saw that the anime was coming out, and I was like, we should play it before that comes out.
私たちも貧血気味でこうやって果物食べてないと死んじゃうっていうか冬休みはもう予定いっぱいっていうか
All the students but one scuffled away.
よし、昼食はやっぱり静かにやらねえとな。
That's a weird take, but okay. Maybe that's because I'm
1年
American.
坊主の教室より2年の教室の方がやかましいなんて苦情。いい加減にしやがれよ、アホども。
He kind of reminds me of Gilgamesh, chat, not gonna lie. The mob meekly scurried away. Sojiro turned to join them, but as he did,
あ、お前はこっちだ、宗次郎。ちょい顔貸せ。
the hand on his shoulder held him in place.
だよ生徒会応募。人んちのテーブルマナーまで指図してほしくねえよな。
Let's give him multiple weapons and a spiky haircut. We'll see. We'll wait it out. But he's giving me some Gilgamesh vibes. He comes to theaters. I'm gonna buy tickets to see. Oh, that'll be so cool to see in theaters. Konami cursed him under his breath to his friends the second the vice president turned to go.
はあ？上等じゃねえか、木の実。いいぜ。お前が記念すべき2人目だ。冬休み、首を洗って待って
Was
や
this
がれ。
oversized sword and daddy issues? That is the wrong character. The vice president must have heard everything Kinami said because he gave a thumbs up before figuratively jabbing it in his eye.
はあ？何言ってんですかあいつ。
Skydan, thank you so much for the follow. If you'd like, if you want to be around for when we watch the movie eventually, you can join the Discord by hitting !Discord. Or if you want to see me play Fate Stay Night for the first time, mind you, I had no idea what was going on. It was Fate Stay Night Remastered or Remake or whatever you want to call it. You can hit !Archive, you can get the archive channel.
あれ自主的なイベントじゃん。いくら副会長だって強制はできないですよね。
The problem child of Class C laughed merrily.
そりゃ昨日までの話だ。会長の提案が学校側に受理されてな。本日付で生徒会役員は強制力のある推薦権をもらえたんだよ。特に会長と副会長の推薦は絶対だ。拒否した場合、学校側はともかく青崎が何するか俺には止められねえから、そのつもりでな。
それ事実上の死刑宣告じゃ。生徒会マジ応募。
Kinami's terrified shrieking continued behind them as the vice president and Sojiro left the classroom.
Oh, お前も大変だな、宗十郎。
あんたも割と暇なんだな、副会長。
The two entered the empty student council room. Misaki High's student council had the use of two rooms. One was a large office specifically made for the student council. The second was an archive room once used to as a preparatory office for math courses. As the latter of the two, the walls were lined with densely packed shelves, making an already cramped room seem even more confined. For this reason, it served more as a private refuge for the student council. The two students sat across from one another. Parappa the Rappa, Tobimaru Tsukiji. He was the son of the chairman of Misaki High School and the vice president of the school council. Like Sojiro, he was in his second year and first met the transfer student a week earlier when the task of looking after him was dumped onto the student council.
副会長はやめろって。クソったれな話だが、俺は所詮会長の犬だからな。
As self-deprecating as his words were, he hardly seemed dissatisfied with the arrangement. He took a snack from his pocket and grimaced at it before taking a bite. The 100-calorie energy bars sacrificed flavor for efficacy, but somehow not enough to prevent him from gnawing it out like a piece of jerky.
そうか。
Why don't you actually eat some
でも
food?
犬は良くないな、飛び丸。
Sojiro sat in the chair with a concerned look on his face.
あ？犬がどうしたって？
犬は良くないって言った。例えが違う気がするし、何より怖いぞ、あれ。
なんだよ。山奥育ちのくせに犬が怖いのか？
そりゃ大抵の生き物は怖いけど、犬は別格だ。徒党を組んだ野犬ほど始末に追えないものはない。
Sure, I guess.
足の速さも脅威だけど、何より執念深すぎる。坂だろうと追いかけてくるし、最後の一匹になるまで引かないんだぞ。
Sojiro opened his lunchbox as he spoke. Inside the bright green cloth, 3 beautifully made triangular rice balls.
ショックだ。
ショックって何が？
いや、そんなこの世のものとは思えない握り飯を見たのは初めてだ。
それどっちなんだ？
褒めてるんだよ、バカ。
Sojiro was always confounded by the phrasing that could be interpreted in multiple ways. Euphemisms and subtle sarcasm were often lost on him. It was only on rare occasions like this one that he chose to confirm what was being said. Tobimaru had come to suspect that Sojiro had a very black and white way of seeing things. Yes, he's autistic.
ところで、その固まった小麦粉みたいなの、美味しいのか？
Sojiro stared at the energy bar with a curious look on his face.
まずくはねえが、うまくもねえよ。人間、何事も手間暇惜しむようになっちゃおしまいだぜ。
Tobimaru quickly finished off his bar, put another on the table, and grabbed one of Sojiro's rice balls. Sojiro failed to notice the rudeness of the forced exchange and gave the proffered energy bar a try.
なんだか土を食べてるみたいだ。
It kind of tastes like dirt. All the best characters that represent autism are always the ones that aren't supposed to be autistic. Well, yes and no. Like, they aren't supposed to be autistic, but like, it's kind of hard to not read them as autistic, you know what I mean?
違いない。遊びをなくせば人生こんなもんだって見本だな。
Like, you can't tell me that Mob isn't autistic. Like, the whole entire point of that character is that he's autistic and he doesn't get how other people work. Out of principle, Sojiro labored over his energy bar, cringing all the while. He's both curious of the unknown and loath to leave something unfinished.
今無理に平らげる必要はねえぞ。そいつの利点は携帯食ってところだからな。素で味気ないが、食えるうちは味が落ちないのがいいところだ。
I know what you meant. I was taking apart your argument in general.
まあ、そっちは
Being specific.
どうだ?
You know, you kind of gotta do that when you're on the internet. People like taking your vague sentence and then turning it into a whole completely different sentence.
ああ、飛び丸や青崎が気を使ってくれているからね。
Tobimaru turned his eyes up to the ceiling, unable to handle Sojiro's carefree smile. As absent-minded as Sojiro might have been, his expressions were nonetheless incredibly earnest. It was like a poison to someone as self-absorbed as Tobimaru. Like he wanted to say Tobirama from Mario? From Naruto. No, okay. He took a bite from the rice ball to steer himself away from such thoughts. Though now cold, the rice had managed to maintain its freshness, startling Tobimaru.
Huh? いや待て。気を使ってんのは俺だけじゃねえか。青崎なんてお前が転入した日に彼迷惑だから見張ってての一言だけだぞ。
なんでそこで君が怒るんだ？
いや、だからだな。お前が学校になれるよう陰ながら見守ってんのは俺で、青崎は生徒会室で全校生徒の弱みを集めてるだけって話だ。面倒な苦労してんのは俺だけじゃねえかって。
Tobimaru stopped himself, realizing how ridiculously he sounded. Sojiro, rightly so, knew it was nothing to get this upset over.
まあ、いいさ。青崎に言いつけられなきゃこうなることもなかったしな。
He looks like he goes to the local country club and then throws quarters at the homeless people afterwards. I'm not even gonna deny that one. Normally I go, you're judging this person too quickly, but he does in fact look like that.
副会長だからだろ。
Tobimaru's handsome face went dark.
あのな、どうして副会長が転入生一人にかかりっきりにならなくちゃいけねえんだよ。いいぜ。機会があったら青崎本人に聞いてみな。あいつの本性がわかるからよ。
He snatched another bite of the rice ball while grumbling under his breath. There was again rice grains that were just dry enough to be fresh and tender in the mouth, a morsel that betrayed its humble description, which must have been delicately molded by a master chef rather than haphazardly clumped into a ball.
そして何よりこの塩加減、中の具から染み出した厳妙な醤油加減はどうだ。食欲をそそるどころか脳を食欲だけにするような。おお。
Bro got naked and fucking exploited like in food wars.
飛丸、思ってることが口に出てるみたいだけど。
いや、それほどのショックだったってわけだ。なあ、その字。これ具は何だ？
It was only natural to inquire about the inexplicably delicious bite. He had been nibbling around the edges and had not yet reached the center.
ああ、それはイナゴ。
ありえねえ!
The vice president choked on his cough. He had assumed that Sojiro would prefer. I'm getting another call, but I don't know who this is. It says it's from fucking Schomburg. He had assumed that Sojiro would prefer earthly ingredients instead of seafood on account of his mountain life, but he never expected that he would use grasshoppers. What do you think grasshoppers taste like?
食う前に言えよな。信じられねえぐらいうまいと思っちまったじゃねえか。
ああ、今のは嘘だよ。
I locked eyes for a moment.
本当は鮭。いくらなんでもイナゴはね。
おお、そうだよな。いや、安心した。いくらなんでもイナゴはねえよな。
ああ、こんな都会で身の締まったイナゴが手に入るもんか。
The issue is not that he wouldn't eat a grasshopper, it's that he couldn't find it. As curious as those words were, Tobimaru decided to let them go.
たく、どっちにしても冗談きついぜ。危うく吐き出すところだったじゃねえか。らしくねえぞ、宗十郎。
君が青崎の悪口を言うからだ。
Sojiro closed his eyes and he continued to chew on his rice ball. What face is this? What am I supposed to interpret by a face like this? What emotion are you trying to convey? What is that? Okay, it gave me a voicemail. Give me 1 second while I check this, chat. Chat, nothing to worry about. Just some paperwork I gotta take care of. They always have like the temp agency that I'm working for always has people like from different parts of the state call me like and be like, oh yeah, obviously we're gonna call you about this thing. Like, how the fuck? The job is in Maryland and I'm in fucking Arizona. How the fuck am I supposed to like know to answer a call from Schaumburg, Illinois? Anyway, Sojiro closed his eyes as he continued to chew on his rice ball. Tobimaro watched incredulously as Sojiro made no attempt to hide his disapproval.
おい、今のはさすがに聞き捨てならねえぞ。俺が青崎の悪口を言ったから意趣返しをしたと、そういうことか？
Sojiro continued chewing. The country boy's silent protest said all that needed to be said. The vice president said he looked like he had been struck by lightning.
なんてこった。お前、まさか青崎に惚れてんのか？そうなのか？そうなんだな。おい、眠ってねえで起きろ。
Tobimaro flew out of his chair and violently shook Sojiro by the shoulders. Sojiro opened his eyes.
そうか。お前は1年前の惨劇を知らないんだな。
I think even if he did know what happened a year ago, I don't think he'd care.
知ってりゃ、そんなストレートな破滅願望を持つこともなかったろうに。
君の言葉には誤解が含まれてるけど、それは後にする。それより、1年前の惨劇って？
Again, what face is this? What is that supposed to convey? Tobimaru gained his composure and sat down after a moment's thought.
仕方ねえ。この手の噂をするのは好きじゃねえんだけどな。
Tobimaru reassured himself that it was in Sojiro's best interest as a young man to know.
あれは青崎がまだ1年の頃の話だ。あの頃はみんな入学したばっかりで、青崎がどんな性格か誰も知らなかった。あいつ、外見は文句なしに美人だからな。
There we go.
そりゃ男どもは狂気乱舞したもんさ。
Little did they know that soon after they would go crazy for an entirely different reason.
4月5月はもう上を下への大騒ぎだよ。あの時ばかりは上級生も下級生もなかったな。野郎同士の牽制、共闘、果ては決闘まで。まあよくも騒いだもんさ。青崎に近寄るだけでも大変だったんだぜ。
なんでそんなよくわからない事態になるんだ？
そりゃ青崎は一人きり、命知らずな野郎は延べ100人ほどいたからだよ。一人一人青崎とランチしても3ヶ月かかるだろ。だからまずは男同士でつまんねえ暗闘があったのさ。まあいい。わからねえならそこは飛ばそう。所詮負け犬どもの話だしな。本筋にはなりえねえ。でな、そんなどうでもいい戦いを勝ち残った奴らは列なしで1年の女に言い寄ったわけだ。青崎はあれで、なんていうか、相手のなけなしの誠意じゃなくてあれか、勇気、そういうのを無視できずに認めちまうやつだからな。言い寄ってくる相手を可能な限り丁寧に断ってた。が、中にはそれで勘違いしちまうやつもいてよ。3年のある野郎がこれは脈ありと見て青崎に何度も言い寄ったんだよ。多分そいつ頭がおかしかったんだ。今にして思うとそうとしか思えん。
Incidentally, Tobimaru decided to gloss over the fact that this student was also the former student council president.
学園ばかりか、青崎の家まで押しかけたそうでな。あまりにしつこいんで青崎も堪忍袋の尾が切れたんだろう。ちょっと口にするのははばかられる方法で振っ ったんだよ。
Alright, sounds to me he got what he fucking deserved, didn't it? Like, being persistent is already creepy enough, right? But like following her home, he got what he fucking deserved.
結果、そいつは自分から他校に転入希望したばかりか、三崎町からも逃げ出しちまって、青崎も1ヶ月ばかり自宅謹慎を食らった。世に言う血の公会堂事件だ。
Oh, fuck that guy. Good for her. Shit.
詳しく知りたけりゃ本人はまずいな。新聞部にでも行け。あそこの部長は命知らずだから、聞けば面白がって教えてくれる。
Even if what you said happened exactly.
その具体的な表現を恋に避けてないか。
Even if that happened exactly the way that he said it did, he got what he fucking deserved. That guy was weird.
仕方ねえだろ。理事長の息子だろうがなんだろうが、怖いものは怖えし、高校ぐらいは無事卒業しとかねえとな。うちの女子の制服見るたびに規制を上げるトラウマなんて持ちたくねえよ。
Sojiro tilted his head to the side in confusion. Tobimaro had lost him with that comment.
ああ、いい。それより、なんで青崎なんかがいいんだよ、宗次郎。
He tilted his head again, this time to the other side.
おい、お前、本当に青崎が好きなのか？
Ella raised no bitches, get your ass whooped.
単に胸がドキドキ言ってるだけなら、それは恋じゃなくて恐怖だってオチもあるぜ。いくらその字がぼんやりでも、理由ってもんがあるだろう。
He tilted his head even further. What Tobimaro was saying sounded off, but Sojiro decided not to press the matter. All the more because he found many of his own emotions toward Aoko Ozaki to be incomprehensible.
そうだな、おかしい。俺はあまり彼女を知らないのにね。
That was because they had not truly spoken to each other since the day she showed him around. Every time Sojiro tried to talk to her, she immediately got up and left. As fate would have it, they ended up working together that recent Sunday, but only made idle chatter on the way back. On the way
けど
back.
飛丸、君は知らないだけなんだ。時々なんだが、誰かの視線を感じて振り返ってみると、いつ失敗するかを心配して見ている人がいる。飛丸の言う通り、ただ廊下で俺を見かけて単に監視していただけなのかもしれない。本当は俺のことなんて気にせず素通りしたいのかもしれない。けどどんな種類であれ彼女の心配は本物だ。それにここが一番大事だと思うんだけど、実際の話、青崎のそういうところのおかげで俺は助かっていたりするんだ。
His tone was measured and sincere. Tobimaro sighed with a tinge of regret. If not for those words, he could have introduced Sojiro to a more suitable girl with whom he could have lived out the rest of his school days in peace. He never went to such lengths for his other friends. Generally speaking, if it was some benefit to him, he was unafraid of exploiting another. If they were of no use, he didn't bother getting involved with them. That was how Tobimaro Tsukiji operated. Sojiro happened to be the type of person who provided no benefit to Tobimaro, yet somehow sparkled in him a desire to help. It was not a friendship that was completely alien to him. He just did not have many people he felt that close to. So if Sojiro had really fallen for Aoko, it was not his place as a friend to try and change his mind.
やれやれ。結局、惚れてるやつには理由なんていらねえんだな。
そんなことはない。理由なら一つある。彼女を一目見たときに綺麗だなって思ったぞ。
ん？
Tobimaro's shoulders slumped.
なんだ？あんだけ恥ずかしいセリフ言っといて、要は外見に惚れてますな。結局見てくれかよ、宗次郎。
綺麗なものに見とれるのはいいことじゃないのか？自分を綺麗に見せる努力をしているんだから、外見から内面を判断するのはそんなおかしな話じゃないと思う。
That sounded like a sophism to Tobimaru, but he had no counterpoint to offer.
しょうがねえ。わかったよ。 この話はもうやめよう。その字が誰をてめえの女にするか、俺の知ったことじゃねえし。
Now, Tobimaro was mistaken about one major point during this whole conversation. Namely, that Sojiro was not head over heels in love with Aoko and hoped to go steady with her. He merely liked her as a person. Nobody could have foreseen the massive calamity that would be caused by the simple misunderstanding.
だがよ、一つだけ忠告しておくぜ、宗次郎。青崎は喧嘩をした相手だろうと別に嫌うわけじゃない。逆に言えば、親切にしたって別に好かれるわけでもない。
That's kind of like all people.
いい例が俺だ。
That's just all people. He spoke with the pained sighs of opening old wounds from the past.
そうか。詳しく。
おう、昔な、あいつがあんまりに独善的だったんで、手
Bruh,
を上げかけちまったことがある。
what the fuck?
半年前の夏だ。1年もあいつと生徒会やってたもんだから、俺も女っつうより戦友って気になっててな。
Okay, but like, no matter what the situation, why the fuck would you try to hit her?
つい勢いで平手打ちをしようと右手を上げた。我ながら4番バッターも角也という腰のひねり。確かな実感とともに、
So you didn't try to
俺は
hit
勝
her.
利を確
You
信した
did
の
hit
に
her.
さ。
You just did. He had a distant look in his eyes as his words trailed off.
翌日になって、こりゃ完全に敵扱いされたなと覚悟して生徒会室に行ってみりゃ、青崎はいつも通りだった。で、以来あいつと俺は会長と副会長で収まってる。
Sojiro cited his story. He then said with absolute confidence,
今の話を総合すると、君は単にのろけたいのか？
What? Clearly he had missed the point entirely.
なわけあるか！今の話のどこに甘酸っぱい要素があんだよ。俺としちゃあいつを女として見なくなった決定的な事件だったんだがね。
So?
なんだ、違うのか？
A look of disappointment flitted across Sojiro's face. Tobimaro revised his opinion. Sojiro was something of a simpleton, but there was a quality to him that Tobimaro could not quite place.
とにかくだ。俺が言いたいのは、青崎青子の好き嫌いの基準ってのは普通じゃないってことだ。いいことをすれば好かれる。気に入らないことをすれば嫌われる。ってわけじゃねえんだよ。あのお姫様は。
Sojiro answered that Sojiro answered that he would keep it in mind as he looked onto the cloud. The quality is called autism. She got hit and simply did not give a fuck. On top of the fact that it wasn't like a normal hit either. It was a right hook. She ate a right hook and then acted like she never got hit to begin with. Also, he is kind of regretful that it happened, but you're still a dick. I think my assumption that he's kind of like Gilgamesh was kind of spot on. Fuck that guy. They had been talking for a while and lunch was almost over.
もう君からの話はないか？
あ？初めからねえよ、そんなの。
Why had Tobimaro even brought him here in the first place? Sojiro tilted his head in wonder, but shook it off to deal with the more pressing matter at hand.
よし。じゃあもう少し付き合ってくれ。飛び丸に聞きたいことがあったんだ。
All he needs to do is say he throws quarters at homeless people? Really? I mean, I don't think he's naturally like that. I think he's just really prideful in himself. He's like, if Dio weren't totally an asshole the entire time. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like if Dio decided, nah, murder is not worth it. Tobimaro sat up straight, having never seen Sojiro's face look so serious before. Sojiro set aside his rice ball and cleared his throat.
実は昨日、こんなことがあって。
He spoke solemnly, and as carefully as possible, he recounted what had occurred the night before. If Dio stopped at knee Danny, yes, maybe he pulls the knife. But if he never got worse than that. It was 10 to 12 and lunchtime was quickly coming to an end. Her face popped into Class C as lively as ever, as if it were an everyday occurrence. Aoko Ozaki announced her presence. While Aoko wasn't part of Class C, she didn't let it bother her as she casually entered the classroom. In contrast, the baby birds who had been so noisily chirping while eating lunch quickly quieted and began to rearrange their seats.
どういう意味よそれ。
She bristled internally before looking around the room. She could not see the male students she had come here to find. He hardly stood out, so she thought he might have hidden in a corner somewhere, but that appeared to not be the case.
有里くん、出席番号12番のしずきくんは？
Aoko kept her tone professional.
俺？しずきならさっき飛び丸殿下が連れて行ったよ。
The boy was shocked that she actually knew his name. One might think that the reason students referred to Tobimaru Tsuhichi by a royal title was because he was the chairman's son, but it was because he actually acted like royalty. Oh no, he was exactly like Gilgamesh. I was right on the money with that. In fact, the vice president was said to have taken a liking to the title.
飛び丸が？あいつしずきくんと仲いいの？
She seemed surprised. The class seemed surprised at her surprise.
いいも悪いも築地くんが男子と仲良く話してるのって今まで見たことなかったよ私たち。あ、木の実くんはバカだから別だけど。
そうだよな。初めは殿下もあんまり話してなかったけど、3日もしたら楽しそうに口喧嘩してたもんな。ま、しずき相手に突っ張っても仕方ないじゃん。あいつ変だけどいいやつだし。
そうよね。いい人だもんね、宗十郎くん。
Having recomposed themselves, Class C started chatting again. Aoko listened for a bit before turning around and leaving the class with a later. All the Sojiro talk finished as quietly as it had started. Lunchtime was coming to a close in the student council room. Sojiro, having told this story, was smiling in satisfaction. Tobimaru, still across from him, was frowning.
さあ、感想を聞かせてくれ。
Sojiro told his yarn as best he could. Tobimaru fingered his brow as if he were angry or concerned.
なあ、そうのじ。お前、人をバカにできるほど器用なやつじゃねえよな。
So it's interesting how they localized it as Sonoji, like Sono and the letter G, because he's saying Sonoji as in S-O-N-O-J-I, which is a common, like, quote-unquote cutesy nickname.
失礼な。器用な方だぞ、俺は。
His response only confirmed Tobimaru's suspicions. It had to be one of two possible conclusions. That what Sojiro had told him was true, or that Sojiro was so tired that he must have been hallucinating at one time. Tobimaru sincerely hoped it was the latter.
Sojiro, 率直に言って、俺はお前が気に入っている。嘘のない人間なんてのは人間じゃねえ。俺は人間嫌いだから、そんなお前さんが気に入ってたりするんだが、そんなやつまでバカげたことを言い出したら、俺は明日から何を頼りに昼飯を食えばいいんだ？
学食で食べればいいんじゃないか？
Hearing his suggestion, Tobimaru's face darkened.
わかった。はっきり言おう。それは幻覚だ。
So what I'm assuming happened is that he saw a magic fight without Aoko, and he just told Tobimaru, and Tobimaru was like, nigga, no, you did not see that. None of what you just said was real.
幽霊の正体見たり枯れ尾花ってやつだろうさ。それでも納得いかないってんなら、いい精神科を紹介してやる。
それが君の感想か。よし、ならいいんだ。
As better as Tobimaru's words might have sounded to most, Sojiro swallowed them whole.
そりゃ俺だって神隠しの類だと思ったよ。けど都会じゃもしかしてそれもありなのかもしれないだろう。確かめたかったのはそこなんだ。
Satisfied, Sojiro finished off the last rice bowl and neatly folded the cloth.
おい、すると何か？お前は都会の人間は口から火を吹いたり、腕が伸びたりするのが普通だと思ったのか？
まあ普通じゃないけど、特別でもないんじゃないかと思ったんだ。
Yeah, he saw that bitch have a magic fight and was like, what the fuck? What am I saying right now?
ここは山にないものが溢れている。何でもありの場所だ。だから、それぐらいやってのける人だって、もしかしているのかなと。
That his face was as serious as it was made, Tobimaro realized just how big a culture shock Sojiro must have been experiencing. Living up in the mountains with no electricity, in a place where the night sky was as it always had been, where humans were just one more organism in nature's garden. It makes sense that those conditions would create a boy like him. So are these people gonna be the school friends in Bleach where they completely disappear from the story when they enter the Soul Society? I don't know yet. It's likely. The idea of children growing up so pure was an appealing one, but maybe it was natural to forgo civilization when your population was so small. Or perhaps it was so simple a world that excessive knowledge was deemed irrelevant. It was precisely because the city life offered him so much that was impossible up until now that he had come to the conclusion that anything was possible here.
安心しろ。確かにこっちにはたちの悪い奴らばっかりだけどな。そんな魔法使いみたいな奴はいねえよ。
そうだといいんだけど。
But Sojiro seemed unsure. And on Tobimaru's part, there were things that Sojiro's story that he found hard to swallow. Whether true or not, the incident Sojiro had described was disturbing.
まあ、事の真偽というか、どんな間違いでそう見えたかは置いておいてだ。結果だけ見れば、うちの生徒が夜の公園で人を殺したってことになる。しかも双方控えめに表現しても普通じゃね
え。As a newcomer to town, Sojiro assumed that everyone his age was a student at this school. For better or worse, he was right.
一人は火炎放射器を持って、もう一人は、まあなんだ、なぎなたでも持ち出したのか、刃物らしきものが何メートルも伸びたときた。
Sojiro bobbed his head up and down as he listened to the disbelief in Tobimaru's voice. Hearing it repeated by someone else, he could see how someone might think he was taking them for a ride.
正気を疑うな。尋常じゃないぞ、その話。
宗十郎、お前、実は俺をからかってんだろ。
いや、全く。けどまあ、都会にはそんな人間はいないんだろ。なら飛び丸の言う通り、夢でも見てたんだ。ここのところアルバイトと試験が重なって辛くて。
Winter break was just around the corner and the end of term exams were but a week away, both were proving formidable opponents for Sojiro.
俺は基本ができてないから、人の倍程度の勉強じゃ追いつけない。ほら、勉強ばかりしているとノイローゼをするんだろ。
そりゃするんじゃなくてなるものだが、何にせよ、やりすぎ飲みすぎはよくねえわな。試験前ぐらいはバイト減らしたらどうだ？
I just realized that the little animation after the period turned into a sweat drop when the character has a sweat drop. It is there's a lot of small details that I'm liking a lot, like such as like they're moving the character sprites around and whatnot. I'm already worried about that spoil. I already know how Rukia was able to make everyone forget about her when she was able to leave. Oh, don't worry about that. He just means that there's a lot of characters in Bleach and some of the characters don't get as much screen time as you probably would like. That's all he meant. There were a lot of characters in Bleach.
減らしてはいるんだけどね。年末ってアルバイトを休む人も多くて、その代行も頼まれがちだし。
He shrugged helplessly. It was obvious from his words that he had been busy. Even if he was not going crazy, lack of sleep could have caused him to daydream, even if it all did go down in the middle of the night.
なんだか大変そうだな、宗十郎。
ああ、実はかなり参ってる。
Sojiro noticed with a pained look at his face. Nodded, sorry. What was strange, however, was that he did not look the least bit tired.
泣き言言わねえのは感心するけどな。お前、新郎は顔に出ないたちか？
そりゃ新郎はどこも痛まないからね。
As he answered, Sojiro looked up at the clock on the wall. Lunchtime was almost over. I need my fixation to come back naturally so I can keep watching more episodes. Sometimes it happens that way. Sometimes you gotta force yourself to do it.
飛び丸、時間だ。
ああ、もうそんなに経ったか。気にせず先に行ってていいぜ。
Sojiro watched as Tobimaru made a gesture that seemed to lament the life of a student council member. His eyes looked as if they were looking at a piece of art and not understanding its value.
授業をサボれる身分っていうのは羨ましいな。そういうの飛び丸が嫌いな手抜きじゃないのか？
そりゃ誤解も甚だしい。俺の欠席は手抜きじゃねえ。特権ってやつだと言ったろ。
No, it's skipping. It's just skipping with permission. You're allowed to break a rule. The vice president angrily defended himself as he stood up. The transfer student merely gazed at him unfazed.
おいおい、あれだけ説明したのに全然分かってなかったのか。しょうがねえ。まず座れ。いいか、その字。常人を上回る英気と幸運を兼ね備えながら、座することなく精進してきた俺でも、ここを卒業しちまえば裸一貫になっちまうんだぞ。ひでえ話だ。てめえの家柄を活用できんのはあと1年ちょいだけなんだぜ。これの一体どこが羨ましいってんだ。普通一生続くはずの親の七光ってやつが、俺の場合はたった3年間しかねえんだからな。となりゃ有効なうちに使っておかなきゃもったいなくておちおち眠ってもいられねえ。
So you are skipping.
ああ、嫌だ嫌だ。何が嫌かって、バカどもとガン首並べて金勘定するのが嫌だ。たく、嫉妬渦巻く大人の世界じゃ、俺のオブラートみたいな心なんてパックリ飲まれて溶けちまうこと受け合いだろうさ。
While he must have been joking, Soichiro took his tone to be completely sincere. He listened as he envied Tobimaru's ability to be so openly about his feelings. From his frame of reference, there was nothing he could do but take Tobimaru for his word. When
あら、そんな権利なんて留年すればいくらでも引き延ばせるのに。なんなら協力してあげましょうか。
the door to the student council room flew open, washing away Sojiro's half-hearted response to his friend. This frosty statement destroyed the warm atmosphere of the room. It also marked the abrupt end of Tobimaru Tsukiji's reign there.
いや、いい。自分の夢は自分の力だけで叶えようと常々思ってるんだ。
そなら今みたいな恥ずかしいこと力説しないでね。廊下にまで聞こえてたわよ、副会長さん。
Yeah, like details like that. Just it's the same room, it's the same thing, but they just placed the sprites in there and then moved the camera. Like just that in and of itself is so like it's just visually interesting. Not missing a beat, Aoko Yozaki stepped inside the room. Her dark hair was slightly disheveled as she'd been running. Her gaze missed the sitting Sojiro entirely and was focused completely on the ranting vice president.
頑張れ、飛び丸。
Sojiro quietly got up to head back to his classroom.
割と薄情なんだな、お前って。
Tobimaru grumbled in front of Aoko.
だって時間がない。
だから、そういうのが薄情とだな。
He cut himself off. Aoko briefly shifted her gaze to Sojiro.
時間がないのは私も同じよ。あなたにはいつも振り回される。
Not a complaint, it was her honest opinion.
なんだ、要件は総十郎かよ。
安心なさい。あなたにもあるから。
Her eyes shimmered with a murderous glee. He was slightly different from the more sullen gaze to which Tobimaru had grown accustomed. For whatever reason, Naoko's mood seemed worse than usual.
しずきくん、あなた、走るのと泳ぐの、どっちが好き？
I hate swimming. I don't think running would be... If we're 16, right? If we're 16, I was actually in shape at that point, I'd probably choose running. Naoko asked abruptly. Sojiro frowned a little before saying he was fine with either one.
ダメよ。一つにして。
泳ぐ方かな。
あなたがまだどこの部にも所属してないから。
Nah. A succinct reply. One that left no room for Sojiro to object.
うちの校則読んだわよね。生徒はただ一人の例外もなく、部活動に参加しなくてはならない。正直どうかと思う校則だけど、決まりは決まりだから。
そんな無茶な。悪いけど、そこまでの暇はないんだ。
でしょうね。
An equally terse response. She was typically to the point, but Tobimura got an impression that she was expressly trying to keep her interaction with Sojiro short. They stared at each other in silence. Tobimura stood breathlessly silent on the sidelines until Sojiro broke the impasse.
青崎は分かってると思ってた。あ、いや違う。きっと分かっているんだな。うん。だから、そこが強いんだろうね。
Sojiro stood up from his seat. He walked past Aoko and into the hallway.
それ、明日からでいいんだろ?
That looked like you were about to choose between one of them. I thought so too, but this game apparently is linear. When we get to tsukihime, there will actually be choices that do matter.
しずきくんがいいならね。
He did his best to force a smile before leaving the student council room. While watching the events play out, Tobimura found himself deeply impressed with Sojiro. He could tell from Aoko's behavior that she was trying to get a rise out of Sojiro. Sojiro, on the other hand, didn't react. Heedless of what Aoko was doing, he simply went on his way. To Tobimura, it was hard to believe that Sojiro had not taken offense. From his point of view, Sojiro's poker face had been the performance of a lifetime.
いや、でも何が強いんだろうな、会長。
He looked at Aoko curiously. Aoko stood completely still, staring at the wall.
青崎?
Aoko showed no response.
おい、会長。青崎。青子女子。おい、聞いてんのかよ、青崎青子。
さいはね、青を呼ぶな。
Her fury echoed across the student council room. It was a beautiful sound that could be heard in the hallway, and it made Tobimura's rant from earlier pale in comparison.
やかましい。うるせえのはてめえも同じだ。
Perhaps her shouting was still ringing in his ears, or he was just the type to answer a shout with a shout, but he shot back reflexively.
そんなんだから男の一人もできねえんだよ、お前は。ほら、目覚めたか?
Alright, there's no reason to be sexist.
別にあなたの声は聞こえてた。煩わしかったから無視してただけよ。黙らせるの面倒だし。
てめえな、俺はカカなんかか、おい。
コミュニケーションが成立しない点で言えば、あっちの方がまだ上品よね。
God damn!
ほう、その心は？
お互い何を言ってるかわからない。意味のない会話なら、仰せみたいなものでしょ。
Based on that statement, Aoko must have been under the assumption that dating was the act of two lovers whispering nonsense to each other.
問題は、お前にとって意味のある会話ってのがどの程度の価値かってことだが、いつになくきついじゃねえか、青崎。
ちょっとね。今愛嬌振りまける状況じゃないのよ。
不思議だ。この2年間で青崎の愛嬌なんてものは見たことがないんだが。
飛び丸のいない時に振りまいてたの。
I'm always simple, just not with you.
そうかよ。やっぱりあの時のこと恨んでるんだろう、生徒会長さんはよ。
There was only one thing that Tobimura could be talking about. The incident that occurred in the student council room this past summer.
ずいぶんと昔の話じゃないそれ。そんなどうでもいいことに容量を使っちゃもったいないわよ。ただでさえ脳の覚醒部分が少ないのに。
As the conversation wore on, Aoko's murderous aura began to fade, and her sharp gaze gave way to a calmer demeanor rarely seen from her. It was quite possible that nobody besides Tobimaro had ever seen this side of her at school before.
ご忠告どうも。俺だってあんなことは忘れてよ。ただ、さっきその字がバカなこと言いやがるから、つい思い出しちまったんだよ。くそ、考えてみりゃ場所まで一緒じゃねえか。
Despite his ranting, his face betrayed a touch of nostalgia. Aoko, on the other hand, was scowling.
ちょっと待って。あの話、彼にしたの？
おう、俺がてめえに、なんで会長になんか立候補したのよ。あんたは副会長って顔でしょ、どう見ても。なんて挑発されて、生涯最高の月をしたところまでな。
Aoko let out a sigh as if relieved that Tobimaro had not told Sojiro the rest of the story. Even she wasn't sure why.
あれは確かにびっくりするぐらいいい月だった。思わず体が反応しちゃったものね。
Oh. Oh. You're still a dick, but that's much funnier. He tried to hit her, she weaved this shit and whooped his ass. I mean, that's much funnier.
ところで、私そんなこと言ったっけ？
言った。しかも俺が保健室に運ばれたのをこれ幸いと強引に副会長にしやがった。
Since that day, Tobimaro has served as the vice president to the person who usurped the role from him.
いいけどな。俺に会長職は合わねえって分かったし、副会長の方が性に合ってやがる。会長なんてやってたら、危うく親父みたいな野郎になってただろうしよ。
プライド高い分、できることは全部やるからね、飛丸は。会長職に先進するあまり、気がついたら優等生になってたあんたも見たかったけど。
やめてくれ、ゾッとしねえ。猫かぶるのはお前だけで十分だ。
Tobimaro shooed Aoko away like an annoying pest. It was a typical example of the crude verbal abuse they exchange on a daily basis, with a witness that only two longtime foes could manage.
で、なんでそんな話したのよ。
は？
半年前のここの事件を。
ああ、そっちか。いや、あいつがバカなこと口走ったからなんだが。
He stopped himself before he said any more. He knew better than to let slip the fact that Sojiro had a thing for Aoko. Everyone knew guys didn't sell each other out like that, even if it was all true, in truth, a misunderstanding.
それより、さっきのはないんじゃねえのか、青崎。お前、宗十郎に恨みでもあんの
？7日以上前の恨みを引きずるほど、私はお姫様じゃないつもりだけど。
It also wasn't his fault. He wanted to retort that she was more like a queen than a princess. But he come to know her too well over the past 2 years to dig himself into a hole like that.
恨みはないね。それにしちゃ、恋に喧嘩売ってただろ。確かに調子の狂うやつだが、あいつほどいいやつはいねえだろうに。おい待て、なんだその足元のシロアリを見るかのような態度は。
別にあんたまでそのセリフを言うのかって心底から見下げ果てただけよ。まあ、いっか。いいやつ、いい人、結構じゃない？喧嘩を売る相手としちゃ上等だわ。誰も憎んであげないなら私ぐらいそうしないとね。
That's a strange reason. She said casually, having regained her composure.
しないとねって、お前。
Tobimaro could not follow her reasoning at all. That's because that was a weird thing to say. It's also probably not true. Tobimaro was used to Aoko's erratic trains of thought, but hating Sojiro for no reason seemed needlessly cruel. His friend's naive and innocent face came to mind, and then he blurted,
けど、宗十郎は青崎が好きなんだぜ。それでも嫌いなのか？
His vow of silence had lasted not even 2 minutes.
いや、今のはな、青崎。
He tried to take it back, but it was too late. She had heard his words loud and clear. All he could hope for now was that she would take it well.
そりゃそうでしょ。 好き嫌いは誰にもあるし。けどこればかりはね、彼が私と仲良くしたいって言っても、私は嫌いなんだから仕方ない。
While that is true, I don't think what she thinks is true. Like, she said that, but that was the politician answer, if that makes sense. Stone cold Aoko. Tobimaro found himself filled with indignation at how detached Aoko was being.
いや、そんなお友達感覚の話じゃなくてだな。
Okay, now you're just... yeah, alright, he's digging the hole deeper.
そういう好き嫌いじゃなくて、その字は本気でお前に惚れてるって言ったんだよ。
He shouted, his face the embodiment of sincerity. Aoko gave him a blank stare. It was the face of someone who had lost their wallet hours earlier and was only just realizing it now. The first instant of doubt that ushers in the reality of the situation. But in an instant was all it was.
Ne?
She answered coolly, as if she had no idea why she mattered to her at all.
出ときたか。鬼でもなけりゃ悪魔だな。お前って女は。よかろう。聞こえなかったのならもう一度言ってやる。
Tobimaro gave up any pretenses of masculine solidarity and fired back hard.
いいわよ、そんなの。つまらないもの。
She ruthlessly cut him off. Thinking of the boys who still harbored unrequited love for Aoko, Tobimaro tried hard to come up with a name befitting of the demoness in front of him.
なるほどね。それでさっきの話に結びつくわけだ。へえ、柄にもなく友達思いじゃない殿下。ってことは、聞くも無残、語るも無情っていう私の噂話。
She laughed at a fiendish smile she laughed as a fiendish smile adorned her face. Alright, I know she's being a dick and she's doing it on purpose, but I kinda like her, chat. Then again, I said the same thing about Rin, so maybe I just have a type. Tobimaro repented to God, whoever and whenever he or she might be, for even bringing up Aoko's love life.
飛び丸にしちゃ正しい判断ね。褒めてあげるから、どんな話をしたのか聞きたいな、私。
He was smiling, but Tobimaro wished she'd at least try to hide the bloodlust.
代表作とここでの事件を2つばかり。
I think you just like people who are dicks. Well, I think the thing is that she's not actually an asshole. Good luck, Batra. She's being an asshole to him, who very clearly needs... He kind of needs his ass whooped, and she did in fact kick his ass. So, but she herself is not actually an asshole. Aoko nodded with satisfaction as she listened to Tobimaru's hesitant answer.
こういう時、噂話って便利よね。うるさいのを追っ払ってくれるから。でも、そんな話を考えなしで広めたら大変だから、これからは気をつけてね。
Had this been in writing, the chillingly sweet tone of her words could have been signed with a heart. Whether angry or happy, Aozuki spoke in a disturbingly cute manner when she was in a heightened emotional state. Tobimaro took note of this new discovery, aware that it did nothing to get him out of the situation.
ああ、俺も命は惜しいからな。口はもう滑らねえよ。けどよ、青崎。本気で宗十郎が嫌いなのか？
He knew that it was a topic he would be better off avoiding, but he tried asking anyway. The bonds between men at times shine more beautifully than a pearl.
まあ、好きじゃないから嫌いっていうわけじゃないけど、私が彼のことを嫌う理由は自分でもわからない。だからダメなのね、きっと。
Perhaps to placate Tobimaro, Aoko paused the contemplation before she answered. Giving it a moment without immediately blurting out a response meant that not even he could complain.
そうか。まあ、そういうことならしょうがねえか。何しろ、綺麗さっぱり感情論だ。お互い理由もなく好きと嫌いじゃ、手を貸す隙間もねえわけだし。
Thinking that would be the end of it, Tobimaro looked up toward the ceiling and silently apologized to Sojiro. However, his final sentence appeared to have piqued Aoko's interest.
待って。今の、どういう意味？
Her her faux cheer had vanished. Failing to pick up on this, Tobimaro answered nonchalantly.
いや、あいつもさ、青崎に惚れた理由がわからないなんて言いやがってよ。ああ、違ったか。理由なんてないなんて意味だったかな。
Tobimaro was still in disbelief that Sojiro had been charmed by Aoko's appearance, so he purposely left that part out.
理由はないですって。
ああ、なんで俺がいくらお前の噂話をしても無駄だった。天津さえなんて言ってたかな。そうそう、理由はどうあれ青崎の心配は本物なんだとか、自分はそれで助かってるとか、俺なんかには言えないセリフだったのは確かだね。どうにもはっきりしてんのは他の野郎どもと違って、噂を聞いても手を引く素振りなんざみじんもなかったってことだけ。
Tobimaro finally noticed the shift in Aoko's demeanor. She was scowling at the wall. She glared at it in silence like it was her worst enemy, and this continued for several minutes.
何それ。さっきといいそれといい、どこかで聞いたようなことばっかり。
Damn, that's a shiny ass wall. It was. Oh, fucking look at her. She's fucking vibrating. She's about to hit Ultra Instinct, I swear to God. So great was her ire that the gnashing of her teeth was audible. The irritation seethed until it reached the point that Aoko forgot Tobimaro was even in the room. He may want to leave, yeah. Tobimaro looked heavenward for forgiveness, saying that he brought further calamity down upon Sojiro's head.
少しわかったわ。なんであいつが気に食わないのか。
Tobimaro looked away as if to indicate that he'd rather not know, but Aoko ignored him and began to grumble venomously.
あいつ、私が嫌いなやつと言動が似てるのよ。誰彼構わずいい人扱いされるところとか、妙にふわふわしてるところとか、いちいち私の勘に触るところとか。
Glancing idly up at the clock, Tobimaro thought the last parts just sounded like a misplaced anger. And that was that. 1 o'clock had come and gone.
わかった。もういい。この話をした俺が悪かった。で、俺に用ってのはなんだよ。言っとくけど、もう授業始まってるぜ。
え？授業って、なんで？いつ？
いや、さっき総の字が出てってから、青崎がギラーンって壁に睨んでた時にチャイムが鳴ったんだよ。いいのか、生徒会長。5次元目ばっくれて。
いいわけないでしょ。なんで黙ってんのよ、あんたは。
She looked like she was on the verge of tears as she shouted and pulled at his necktie. Tobimaro raised his hand in a mock surrender, in a gesture reserved only for the true victor.
蚊の方がエレガントなんて言いやがった仕返しだ。思い知るがいい。男の純情を踏みにじったり焼き殺したりするエリート悪魔め。
相変わらず細かく根に持つ男。言動には言動で返しなさいよね、卑怯者。
He tightened his necktie around his neck with a yank. The vice president smiled a thuggish grin, as if her reaction made his victory that much sweeter.
お前の古典が破滅に向かっているのは周知の事実。そして A 組の5次元目は言うまでもない。藤代のばあさん。青崎のこと嫌ってるしな。
Fujishiro had one of the longest tenures at school, so it was only natural she would be in charge of teaching the classes.
さあ、こんなところで俺のネクタイを引っ張る余裕があるのなら、急いで自分の教室に立ち返るがいい。情けだ。別に止めはしねえよ。
くそ、あんたなんかにはめられるなんて。このまま死んでしまえ。
She choked him even harder with his necktie. As Aoko put words into actions and mercilessly strangled Tobimaro, he saw his life flash before his eyes.
いや、待て待て、本当に死んじまうだろうが。今ならまだ間に合う。10分過ぎたら遅刻から欠席扱いだぞ。
Aoko glanced up at the clock. It was still only 7 past 1. Her route from the student council room on the 2nd floor to the Class A classroom on the 3rd floor, if she ran, she could make it.
命拾ったわね、飛び丸。
Aoko clicked her tongue disappointedly. What disturbed Tobimaru is that it didn't sound like an empty threat.
あと放課後、ここにいて。頼みたいことがあるのは本当なんだから。
She was halfway out of the room before she even finished her sentence. Finally all alone, Tobimaru closed the door, locked it, and slumped into a chair.
たく。ああしてる分には楽しいやつなんだけどよ。
He leaned back in the creaky folded chair and let out a sigh. The weather outside was beautiful, but the sunlight waned early in the winter. Before long, daylight would fade and the unheated student council room would grow colder and colder. All of the good equipment, like the heater, had ended up in the main office, so he had no choice but to settle in for a chilly afternoon.
こんな天気が続けばいいんだがね。天気予報じゃ、また雲行き怪しいって話だが。
After his somewhat suggestive monologue, Tobimaru's mind drifted. He oddly wondered to himself whether Sujiro was an overcast day or a clear sky sort of guy, but no answer came. What's your favorite type of weather, chat? The school day over, Sojiro headed straight to his job. While the school had approved his jobs at the Chinese restaurant and fish market in Misaki shopping district, there was other work he hadn't mentioned to them. And it was not because he knew they would already complain about him working too many, but rather because of the illicit nature of one job in particular. See ya, bud. How you doing? You like slightly cloudy? I like summer day cloudy weather. Especially if it's like windy enough that the heat isn't bothering you. That's nice. Today, his workplace was a pachinko parlor in front of... I don't think you're allowed to work a pachinko parlor in front of Yashirogi Station. You're not gonna believe me, but there's a game on Roblox called Sleep on Maki's Lap. Oh, I believe you. I'm not even surprised. Roblox is kind of wild. Sojiro changed out of his school uniform and into a black faux tuxedo uniform, then began cleaning the storefront. Yashirogi was the jewel of Misaki City, a busy place with a vast assortment of commercial centers and shopping arcades. Where there were people en masse, there were products made en masse. A romantic might describe it as a place of joy. A realist would note the free enterprise. And a cynic would point at all the garbage, excuse me. Local authorities had attempted to beautify Yashirogi, but there was one basic tenet of society that could not overcome. The perfect weather is whether you could just lay in a hammock and take a nap. Yeah. What that means to there's a store over there called Fight Me or Fit Me. What hammock laying weather is to certain people depends on the person though. But I agree with that. The establishment was the embodiment of that rule. Businesses such as this attracted the dregs of society, and as such, the front of the parlor had to be cleaned several times a day. Sojiro stood outside the winter cold, sweeping used-up cigarette butts, picking up the scattered flyers, and tossing empty cans into the trash. Something about it must have reminded him of mountain life because he cheerfully finished the job with ease. I'm sure there are people who would lay in a hammock and take a nap in freezing cold. I've mentioned this before, but I had a buddy in high school who, no matter what, wore a t-shirt, cargo shorts, and sandals. And when it got freezing below cold outside, he wore that exact same outfit, except he put a scarf on. After making sure the storefront was acceptably clean, he returned to the inside of the parlor where it was nice and warm. Blinding lights, deafening sounds. And the impressive odor of tobacco assaulted him as he passed through the parlor on his way to the office. Was he white? Oh yeah. That sounds like a very Pokemon thing to do. Yeah. The cargo shorts gave it away. I think it was also Doctor Who's scarf.
はい、ご苦労様。それでいいかな。2階の40番台のお客さんの様子見てきてくれない？どうも懐に飲んでそうなんだよね。あのお姉さん。
His boss was a good-natured man who used to work a desk job. The reason he employed someone like Sujiro, even though he was clearly a student, was not because he admired him for working his way through school. It was because of all the other employees were scary and intimidating, and he wanted to at least one employee who was not.
いいんですか？トイレの掃除まだですけど。
いいのいいの。なんかね、カメラの死角にいるんでいまいち確証取れないの。そうちゃん、今のところ的中率 100% でしょ。様子見てきてくれないかな。
Hearing that, Sojiro put away his cleaning equipment and headed upstairs. It was a typically large-scale pachinko parlor with 2 floors. It prided itself on being a local establishment that was satisfied with taking the locals' money little bit by little, without resorting to more exploitative means. But regardless of the parlor's intentions, its customers were not so scrupulous. Among them were casual players, professional gamblers, and cheaters looking to profit by exploiting whatever loopholes they could find. Let's go gambling! Of course, prevalence was a device developed by in the mid-80s that could disrupt a machine's circuitry from the outside and make it much easier to get what was called the 777 jackpot. As much as the parlor wanted to deny these cheaters entry, it needed to present hard evidence of cheating or risk losing customers. Particularly in the service industry, innocent until proven guilty was not a rule taken lightly. As a result, they could only punish the customers they caught in the act. Such cheaters were known as Gotoshi, a slice of society which Sojiro knew nothing about. What he didn't know is that they were inconveniencing his employer and violating their rules. He went upstairs. The radio and game machine sounds on the second floor were quieter than the cacophony downstairs. There were 100 game machines on the ground floor and over 80 on the second. While there were some empty seats here and there, it was a solid evening turnout. And now this is an actual casino. They even if they even thought you were cheating, you were kicked out and you lost all the money you won. So that's a culture difference, you know. The machine mentioned by his boss is in the center aisle. Sojiro nonchalantly leaned back against the wall and watched the customer hit the jackpot over and over again. Oh, she has a character portrait. The second he saw her, his gut told him she was not cheating. He still was not sure what made someone a master swindler, but if it meant they were special, the woman certainly fit that description. Ass jump scare. It was almost as if she could feel the luck emanating from her. As the customer looked on, she suddenly turned the handle again and again. She appeared older than Sujiro. She wore a green form-fitting one-piece dress. A pair of stockings covering her legs. Her slender legs were gracefully crossed and her elegance suited a painting rather better than a casino. Her dark reddish hair was cut short of a bob, perfectly framing her stylish spectacles and crimson lips. Truth be told, something was off about this picturesque beauty ringing the jackpot over and over again. 4 boxes worth of pachinko balls sat at her feet, and her winning streak showed none sign of abating. She looked bored at as her slender. What are we? Stop using the word slender. It's in every goddamn visual novel. Porcelain fingers lifted a long cigarette to her lips. Just that thought crossed his mind, her gaze turned toward the wall and Sujiro. What would you say is a good replacement? It doesn't even need a replacement. Just don't say the word slender. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. He reflexively covered his mouth to keep from shrieking. Acting on pure instinct, Sojiro took off running. He headed straight downstairs, desperate not to look on the same floor as her. He would have run straight out the door, but his obligations to his job.
店長、早退します。それと、2階の人は問題ないです。
Would you like the word thin or thinner? It doesn't need to be said. It's just a weird, creepy word. Like, you have such slender fingers. Like, just don't say it. It's weird. It doesn't even need to be replaced. Just don't say anything like that. He tried to keep his composure as he spoke, jamming his school uniform into a paper bag as he ran out of the parlor. Cloudy weather brought the shadow of night over Yashirogi as he ran through the shopping arcade toward the station. He shot up the long staircase like an arrow, quickly pulled his train pass out from his wallet, and passed through the ticket gate. The ticket gate was crowded with people standing around, walking and talking. The station attendant by the automatic ticket machine had an unpleasant look on his face. There was now a familiar, comforting hustle and bustle around him. Just another day in the city. He's gonna get murked, isn't he? Nope. He might get fucked up, but I don't think he's dying. Nothing like what he witnessed that night before. He could finally breathe again. The momentary rush of relief brought him to an abrupt stop. He nervously turned around. There was no way that dangerous individual could be behind him. He couldn't even think of a good reason for why he fled so desperately. As far as he could remember, he hadn't even seen the threat's face long enough to form an opinion about her. Sojiro gave himself a good slap on the cheek and pulled himself together and quickly made his way down to the platform. Unfortunately, the next train was 10 minutes away and panicking would do him no favors, so he quietly found an empty seat and sat down. He took another deep breath. He was surrounded by people waiting for the train just like he was, and no sign of anyone pursuing him. His head finally cleared up, and he assured himself that he was overthinking things. Though he was surprised at how heavy his shoulders felt. Sojiro sighed his greater than expected fatigue. He had certainly struggled since coming down from the mountains, but in retrospect, it could have been worse. Physically, he was probably holding up fine. He was much less confident in his mental state. The city and the mountains could not have been more different. He had been slow to recognize the differences and adapt. Acclimation was simple enough. Humans were nothing if not adaptable. Even without any effort, one would learn to adjust over time. Recognizing the challenges had been the hard part. Sojiro grumbled a complaint he'd never uttered before. To be honest, he was still afraid to wander around town. There were so many things city people took for granted that Sojiro had yet to grasp. It was little wonder that this never-ending chain of surprises would wear on him. He muttered to himself, then shook his head. That which exists, exists. Such was the way of all things. Maruha called it a hallucination, but Sojiro knew what he saw was real. The city was a magical kingdom compared to the mountains. If there was real magicians secretly living here, that would have been no surprise at all. The thought alone made his legs tremble, and took him a moment longer to realize that they were quivering out of fear. He had feared the unnatural ever since he encountered a wild bear on a mountain path as a child. The unnatural meal? A bear made you feel the unnatural. Just call my homie Takamura. He'd fight him for you. Sojiro smiled a little. Give my nigga Taijima. Taijima will fight him for you. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. Sojiro smiled a little as he recalled his traumatic childhood memory. Anyone would have fainted at the sudden appearance of a growing beast that towered over 6 feet tall. The monster in the movie that Sojiro saw not 2 days ago was the equivalent of a cuddly stuffed animal when compared to the wild mountain creatures. He was reminded that he faced far worse before, and his ordeal was something he could endure. At face value, the meaning was obvious, but the implications were simply too frightening to contemplate seriously. Perhaps he would misheard the words, or perhaps the speaker had misspoke. Laws of the city, the rules of nature. Chad, I think we have a Metal Gear fan. Even as he said it, the idea didn't quite feel real. It was hard to imagine that it applied to him. Sojiro breathed in and closed his eyes. His vision dimmed, but the illuminating cityscape out of sight. Putting the illuminated cityscape out of sight and out of mind. For now, he resolved to put last night's events behind him. When he opened his eyes, his breathing had calmed.
それでさ、青崎を殴りつけようとして、結局どうなったんだ?
The question suddenly popped into Sojiro's head. He decided he would ask next time and stood up from his chair. A long streak of light blazed by, announcing the arrival of the next train. Surprised the lady hasn't showed up yet? Yeah, like I thought she was gonna talk to him. Maybe she'll be in the train? That was chapter 2? I thought she was gonna be sitting next to him when he sat down, or yeah, like he was saying his thoughts out loud. I thought she was gonna comment on that or something. I'm gonna use the bathroom real quick and we'll continue just a little bit longer. What I'm going to do that is I'm going to end this recording and start a new one when we start back up.